Welcome to my channel. Marvel, Spider-Man? No, I'm Superman. Chapter 41 You are the real heroes. New work time. Accompanied by the images of Superman fighting the Hulk being played on countless large screens around. In the center of the square, an equally exciting battle was taking place. Captain America, holding a round vibranium shield, was fighting against a blonde muscular man wearing gorgeous armor and holding a huge silver hammer. The two men fought back and forth, their shields and hammers constantly colliding, while their free hands clenched into fists, punching their opponents tirelessly, one after another, almost hitting them in the flesh. The terrifying power continued to surge, and the interweaving of hammer and shield caused strong shock waves to burst out from time to time. The shock wave carries such a huge force that it can easily overturn a car. The shield agents who were originally very close to them had already retreated dozens of meters away. The battle between two inhumanly powerful men was not something that ordinary people like them could participate in. Director, do you think the captain can win? Coulson watched the fight between the two people in the distance closely, his eyes full of worry for his idol captain. No matter what the outcome is, we must prepare early. Nick Fury looked solemn and spoke slowly in a deep voice. Gather all SHIELD personnel who can come here, notify Rumlow, and bring all his special operations teams here. As the director of SHIELD, Nick Fury must now assume the worst. After explaining all this, Nick Fury continued to ponder, as if hesitating about something. Boom! As yet another car was destroyed in the aftermath of the fight between the two, Nick Fury finally made up his mind and continued. Also notify Barton and ask him to come here as soon as possible with the experimental results. But director, those experimental subjects have not yet completed testing. If they are exposed now, I'm afraid. After listening to Nick Fury's decision, Coulson reminded him with a serious expression. I don't care about that anymore. We have to solve this big problem anyway. Nick Fury stared at Captain America, who was already showing a slight decline on the battlefield, with a determined look in his eyes. Sure enough, Nick Fury's worries were not unnecessary. Shortly after his order was issued. Boom! Captain America was knocked away by Thor in an instant. His whole body flew backwards dozens of meters and hit a car hard. The terrifying impact force directly smashed a big hole in the bulletproof car, which shows how terrifying the force is. The captain was also flung away by the huge reaction force and fell heavily to the ground with a thud. It turned out that although he had successfully blocked Thor's hammer with his shield, he was exhausted and had no time to react, so he was kicked hard by Thor. Haha! Asgard's warriors are the strongest. Without even using any divine power, and only using his physical strength, Thor easily defeated Captain America, who was said to have reached the limit of human strength. At this moment, Thor was holding up the hammer of Thor in his hand and laughing towards the sky. Team leader. Some of the agents around saw Captain America being defeated, their eyes filled with worry. Chief, let's go fight that guy. Some people were filled with righteous indignation and were ready to fight Thor to the death. And many more. However, the excited agents were stopped by Nick Fury. Hey, you haven't defeated me yet. The next moment, Captain America, who was knocked flying, slowly and difficultly climbed up from the ground. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his hand, gripped the shield tightly in his hand, and walked towards Thor with slow and firm steps. Coming in front of Thor, the captain once again showed his readiness to continue fighting. I can fight you all day long. Haha, I admire you more and more. You deserve me to remember your name. Looking at Captain America with such a strong will, Thor completely put away the contempt in his eyes. My name is Steve Rogers, and I'm from Brooklyn. My name is Thor Odinson, son of Odin the All-Father, from Asgard. Facing an opponent whom he respected, Thor solemnly introduced himself. In Asgard, giving it your all is the greatest respect for your opponent. So, next I will use my strongest power to completely defeat you. Thor's eyes were solemn. At this moment, out of respect for his opponent, he decided to go all out. Feel free to come over here. Captain America did not flinch either, and his calm eyes were filled with endless will. An invisible aura burst out from the two of them. It seems to be getting dark. At this moment, the sky was unexpectedly covered by a thick layer of dark clouds, with thunder and lightning constantly surging in it, as if an extremely terrifying power was brewing. And the next moment, Thor's body slowly left the ground and floated up in the air. Click! A bolt of thunder exploded in the void, and the dark clouds that had been brewing for a long time finally revealed their terrifying power. A flash of silver-white lightning, like a silver dragon emerging from the dark clouds, struck Thor's body. In an instant, silver lightning swirled around Thor. Holding Thor's hammer high in his hand, at this moment he looked like a god who could destroy the world. Come on, we humans are much stronger than you think. Looking at Thor, who was like the real god of thunder, Captain America did not retreat even a single step. The held high head represents indomitable spirit, and the determined eyes reveal endless fighting spirit. At this moment, Thor, who had finally accumulated terrifying momentum and strength, instantly locked his eyes on Captain America below like a sharp arrow. The next moment, Thor's body suddenly burst out with an extremely terrifying momentum, and then he rushed straight towards Captain America below at an extremely fast speed. The lightning swirling around his body formed a long silver streak behind him. However, just as this extremely terrifying attack was about to fall on Captain America, who was waiting on full alert below, two bright red beams of light, like flames, almost instantly crossed from the distant sky. It was so fast that even Thor couldn't react in time and was hit directly in the body. The next moment, the beam of light containing powerful impact instantly knocked Thor's body away. The terrifying impact force directly pushed Thor's body through several buildings. After passing through several buildings in succession, it finally stopped. Boom! But it still continued to move forward and smashed into a building, causing the entire building to collapse. The broken wreckage of the building completely buried Thor's body. That's Superman! At this moment, everyone's attention, including Captain America, was not attracted by Thor, who was knocked flying, but was looking at a tall figure flying rapidly from the distant sky. Boom! In just a blink of an eye, the figure appeared in front of everyone from the distant sky, even faster than their sight. No wonder they all like to land like this, it really is very handsome. Peter, who personally experienced the superhero landing posture, said that no matter whether his knees hurt or not, the posture was very cool. Is this the guy who wants to challenge me? Looking at the figure that had been buried by the collapsed building, Peter slowly stood up and said in a deep voice, "Director, you have the foresight to let us clear out all the residents within a few miles in advance, otherwise." Next to Nick Fury, Coulson looked at the several buildings that were pierced and said with great admiration, "But I feel like the cleared area may not be enough. You are the human hero above Superman." Looking at the figure that fell in front of him in a handsome manner, Captain America couldn't help but hold his breath, pointing at the image on a large screen nearby and asked, his tone full of disbelief. Hearing the voice, Peter slowly turned around, his eyes stayed on Captain America for a moment, and then slowly turned to the people in the distance. "No, you are the real heroes. Chapter 42 Defeat you in your BGM. This guy, is he so kind?" At this moment, many people present couldn't help but feel warm in their hearts when they heard Superman praising them as real heroes. Only a hint of doubt flashed across Nick Fury's calm face. From the information he had, Superman was not so kind. After all, up to this moment, none of those missing scientists have returned to their homes. Boom! Just when almost everyone was looking at Peter with admiration, a loud noise broke the silence at the scene. I saw a figure leaping out from the ruins of the building where Thor was buried, and rushing straight into the sky. The dark clouds in the sky, which were already extremely dense, became even thicker at this moment, completely blocking the sunlight, which was unable to penetrate the clouds and shine onto the earth. Just as the night was coming, a huge shadow covered the entire earth. "Mr. Superman!" I saw Peter turn around and look at the figure in the empty dark clouds, as if he was about to meet him. Captain America behind him suddenly spoke. "Be careful." As Peter slowly turned his head, the captain spoke with some concern. "Thank you for taking good care of him." Peter nodded in surprise, and then spoke in a deep voice to Nick Fury and others in the distance. Then he turned around again and looked towards the sky where thunder was gathering in the dark clouds. "How is this going?" The next moment, Peter's palm slowly rotated and clenched into a fist. A strange wave instantly emanated from his body. Everyone noticed that the tiny gravel and dust on the ground around them slowly floated up and condensed into a miniature hurricane, slowly rotating around Peter. Boom! There was a loud bang and the dust lingering around Peter was blown away. A spider web-like crack appeared on the hard ground, and Peter's figure instantly rushed into the sky like a cannonball. "You're right. The changes in this world are beyond my imagination." Looking up at the figure that instantly rushed into the sky, Captain America slowly spoke to Nick Fury, who came to his side, his tone still unable to calm down. At the same time, in a laboratory in the suburbs of New York. Countless reporters and technology enthusiasts were looking at the star shining like the sun in the center of the laboratory with extremely shocked eyes. At this moment, to everyone, it was almost like a product of God. Haha! I succeeded, I finally succeeded. Dr. Octopus's metal tentacles continued to circle around the small sun to ensure its stability, while he excitedly announced to everyone present that his experiment was a success. The intense joy also infected everyone around. Clap clap clap! Everyone present, including Dr. Otto's wife, couldn't help but applaud. Only in a corner where no one can see, Gwen, who has changed into the spider suit, is more worried than before. Because she saw that the small sun, although still relatively stable at the moment, was constantly releasing golden flames like a solar storm. Hey, what did you say? Superman in New York Plaza? And there's a guy who calls himself Thor who wants to challenge him? Okay, I'll be right over. Amidst everyone's excited applause, an inappropriate voice suddenly rose. Immediately, the reporter who had just hung up the phone left the laboratory with his team without hesitation. What? Superman versus Thor? Is that true? I'm coming right over, this is big news. The reporter who had just left seemed to be a signal, causing almost all reporters and media to receive the news within the next minute and then turn around and leave without hesitation. In just less than a minute, the originally bustling crowd became deserted. There were only a few people there, and it was not clear what had happened. Eddie, aren't you going? Everything about Superman is big news right now. It will definitely make the headlines in the newspapers. As for this experiment, who will be paying attention tomorrow? A reporter holding a camera seemed unmoved by the others and continued to diligently film the entire experiment process. Before leaving, his friend couldn't help but remind him. Forget it. I think this experiment is more groundbreaking than Superman. If I don't stay here, I will definitely regret it. The young reporter shook his head slowly, firmly rejecting his friend's suggestion. Okay, that's up to you. My friend didn't say much, but just turned around and left. If you go too late, you won't be able to see anything. No, you can't leave. Why would you leave? My experiment has been successful. This is a groundbreaking achievement. It will allow me to win the next Nobel Prize. Seeing countless people leave in a short period of time and only a few people left on the scene, Dr. Octopus suddenly became very excited. He has been working hard for more than 10 years just to complete his experiment today in front of all the media and reporters. However, everything in front of him was unacceptable to him. Sizzle. Suddenly, perhaps because he was too excited and distracted, his octopus tentacles failed to repair an energy shield torn by the solar storm in time. The next moment, a special gravitational force suddenly emanated from the mini-sun and instantly swept towards the surroundings. Along with the leaked energy, the extremely sturdy laboratory seemed to be firmly grasped by an invisible giant hand at this moment. Crunch! The metal around it had begun to buckle. Wow! The glass shattered instantly afterwards. However, the broken glass was attracted by the powerful gravitational force and flew rapidly towards Dr. Otto's wife. What? The woman in panic could only scream helplessly. The next moment, a figure wearing a spider suit suddenly dropped from the sky, picked up Dr. Otto's wife, and dodged the incoming glass fragments. Doctor, it's out of control. The experiment has failed. Shut down the experiment. Gwen, who had saved Dr. Otto's wife, shouted anxiously directly to Dr. Otto. No, the experiment has not failed. I can control it. I can definitely make it stable. However, at this moment, Otto seemed to have fallen into madness. No, your experiment was never going to succeed. Although the shield you made prevents all energy, including gravity, from leaking out, the powerful energy will continue to accumulate, and the consequences will be even more serious. Okay. In the sky above Times Square in New York, Peter suddenly felt a huge energy appearing in the distance. And most importantly, this energy seemed to have an inexplicable attraction to him. Could it be? Looking in that familiar direction, Peter seemed to have thought of something in an instant. Damn you, you dare to be distracted in front of me. Looking at Peter, his opponent in front of him, who was actually distracted by other things at the moment, Thor felt despised in an instant, and couldn't help but yell at Peter. Thor, right? Then let's finish the fight quickly. I have something else to do later. Peter retracted his gaze and looked calmly at Thor, the god of thunder, in front of him, and urged him in a relaxed tone. Well, since you are so eager to be defeated by me, I will grant your wish. How could the proud Thor not be angry when being looked down upon by Peter? Then he rushed towards Peter with the hammer in hand. And many more. Why, are you scared? It's not too late to admit defeat now. Thor asked with some confusion. Hey, who of you has a player? Please play some dynamic BGM for me, thank you. However, Peter did not answer Thor, but shouted to the people on the ground. Let me. On the ground, a beautiful girl from the shield camp answered without hesitation. Then he took out his computer and started typing quickly on the keyboard. Ah! Ah! In less than 10 seconds, exciting music began to play on the big screen in Times Square. Is this your new recruit? Nick Fury couldn't help but turn to Coulson and ask. Yes, her name is Daisy, a genius hacker. In the sky, listening to the music floating over the entire Times Square. Peter's expression froze instantly. Okay, then I'll defeat you in your BGM. Looking at Thor, a bright red light accumulated in Peter's eyes. Chapter 43 Seizing Thor's Hammer. Dear audience friends, we meet again. The helicopter was hovering several kilometers away from New York Square. It is an honor that today we will once again witness the heroic figure of the human hero Superman. The reporter was introducing the scene while sitting in the helicopter. The photographer beside him also cooperated by adjusting the lens and giving a close-up of the figure in the distance. And opposite Superman is a guy who calls himself the God of Thunder. The photographer followed instructions and turned the camera toward another figure. He actually dared to challenge our hero. Is he brave? Or is he ignorant? Next. Let us witness together who will win the final victory in the battle between the two. However, I personally support our hero Superman. He is the most powerful and will definitely win. Let's wait and see what happens next. As the press conference ended, the photographer used a wide-angle lens to capture the two figures in the sky. What? At the same time, as Peter's eyes filled with a terrifying red light, Thor could no longer bear it and roared. Along with Thor's roar, the dark clouds gathered in the sky began to roll violently, as if brewing an extremely terrifying force. Click! A thunder that resounded through the heavens and the earth exploded, and a lightning bolt as thick as a bucket instantly hit the Thor's hammer in Thor's hand. Violent thunder and lightning lingered on the silver hammer. The next moment, Thor pointed Thor's hammer at the figure opposite without hesitation. At this moment, there was no testing before the battle. Right from the start, Thor used his strongest thunder power. I vow to defeat the opponent in front of me with overwhelming force. However, as the Thor's hammer in Thor's hand gushed out extremely violent thunder power. Peter on the opposite side also did not hesitate, and the bright red light that was accumulating in his eyes suddenly burst out. Two red beams of light, as hot as flames, carried a terrifying impact and headed straight towards the silver thunder. In just a blink of an eye, the two attacks collided without any surprise. Boom! And at the moment when the two energies came into contact, a deafening roar exploded. Immediately afterwards, a strong shock wave swept towards the surroundings at a speed visible to the naked eye. Even the helicopter hovering several miles away was swept away by the powerful shock wave in an instant, like a lone boat in the roaring ocean, and was almost overturned. Quick, stay away! They originally thought that this distance was far enough, but at this moment, they flew towards the distance again without hesitation. And as this terrifying shock wave spread, the two energies were still deadlocked in the void and had not dissipated. As the saying goes, the left side of the ball has always lost. But at this moment, in the camera's image, it can be easily seen that the red, flame-like energy on the left has the absolute upper hand without any surprise. The violent silver lightning was constantly defeated by the red pillars of fire. In just a few seconds, the silver lightning could no longer be sustained. The bright red column of flame completely occupied the entire sky and continued to move forward, directly hitting Thor's body in the air. The powerful impact it carried sent Thor's body flying several kilometers away. The powerful impact even caused him to lose control of the Thor's hammer in his hand, causing it to slip out of his hand and fall to the ground. Boom! Thor's hammer fell suddenly to the ground, smashing a deep pit several meters deep in the hard ground. Director, should we? Looking at Thor's hammer falling not far from them, Coulson felt a little moved. The others remain on guard, we'll go over and take a look. Nick Fury didn't hesitate at all. He knew very well what Thor's hammer represented. Is this Thor's hammer? When they arrived at the edge of the pit and looked at the huge silver hammer in the center of the pit, an inexplicable impulse seemed to arise in everyone's hearts. Captain America slowly walked towards Thor's hammer, his eyes revealing an eager expression. Team leader. Seeing that Captain America seemed to want to touch Thor's hammer, Coulson couldn't help but feel a little worried. However, Nick Fury said in a deep voice, "Let him try." The next moment, the captain did not hesitate at all and slowly placed his right hand on the hammer handle. Hammer of the gods. In an instant, Thor's hammer began to vibrate slowly. Could it be that he can really pick it up? Looking at the scene before them, Nick Fury and others were in disbelief. "We'll drive our ships to new land." The singing around was still echoing, but Thor's hammer seemed to be suddenly summoned by something, and it rushed straight into the sky and then disappeared. "Ahem, I didn't use any strength just now, it flew away on its own." Captain America looked at his empty right hand, feeling somewhat embarrassed. Out of control. In the air, Peter looked indifferent as he watched Thor being knocked away in an instant. If Thor had fully awakened his power of thunder and possessed Storm Rage after Avengers 3, he might still have a chance to fight him at this moment. But the current Thor is really too weak for Peter. If you have the time, why not go and see what's going on there? Peter slowly turned around and looked in the direction he had just noticed. There was still something attracting him there, and the feeling was getting stronger. However, just as Peter was about to fly over to investigate, a sound of breaking air suddenly came from behind him. "It's not over yet, is it? Then I'll play with you some more." Turning around, Peter looked at Thor, who was spinning Thor's hammer in his hand and rushing towards him at supersonic speed, and his eyes slowly turned cold. "Valhalla, I am coming." Accompanied by the exciting background music, Thor seems to have a buff at this moment, and the divine power in his body is completely awakened. His eyes were filled with silver lightning at this moment, and countless lightning bolts were flowing on the silver armor around him. Behind him, an elongated silver lightning tail made him look like a meteor streaking through the sky. When he was still hundreds of meters away from Peter, he suddenly stopped the rotation of Thor's hammer. The silver Thor's hammer pointed directly at the figure in front. Thor, at a speed faster than the speed of sound and with an extremely terrifying impact and a courageous momentum, crashed straight into Peter in the air. Facing Thor who was rushing towards him, Peter remained relaxed, but he slowly raised his hand with slightly cold eyes. Boom! Thor rushed quickly and hit Peter's figure accurately. However, the collision, which should have been loud and powerful, at this moment displayed a power that was completely inconsistent with the expected momentum. Not only was the momentum weak, it was even far inferior to the momentum when the two of them just fought. With just a slight sound, Thor's rapidly rushing body was successfully blocked. How can this be? Thor, whose neck was strangled by Peter with one hand, still had the lightning in his eyes not completely faded away. He looked at Peter who grabbed him easily, his eyes full of disbelief. "No, I don't believe you are so powerful." The strong sense of unwillingness seemed to make Thor lose his mind. He swung the Thor's hammer in his hand and smashed it hard at Peter's head. However, this time, there was not even the slightest sound, and the blow, which he had gathered all his strength with, was once again caught by Peter with one hand. "No, that's my Mjolnir, give it back to me." Even the Thor's hammer in his hand was easily snatched away by Peter. Brush! Peter threw Thor's body to the ground and looked at the Thor's hammer in his hand with interest. Boom, boom. However, hearing another loud noise besides Thor falling to the ground, Peter's attention was instantly attracted by the explosion in the distance, and the coldness in his eyes became more intense. The hand holding Thor's hammer also slowly began to exert force. Chapter 44 Thor's hammer is broken. This Thor showed up at a really bad time. Feeling the sudden explosion in the distance and the energy that was attractive to him slowly dissipating, Peter turned his cold eyes to Thor who was thrown to the ground by him. "My hammer!" At this time, Thor, who had smashed a big hole in the ground, endured the pain all over his body and slowly climbed out of the pit. He looked at the figure in the sky with incredible eyes. "Mjolnir, come back soon." The next moment, accompanied by the background music around him, Thor raised his right hand and made a virtual grip, while summoning his Thor's hammer in his heart. Hum! Feeling Thor's call, the Thor's hammer in Peter's hand trembled violently and emitted a buzzing sound. "No, this is absolutely impossible." Thor was already shocked that Peter was able to lift Mjolnir. And at this moment, even with his summons, Thor's hammer could not be separated from his hands, which made Thor feel even more unbelievable. Humph! Feeling the increasing resistance of Thor's hammer in his hand, Peter snorted coldly, and then flew directly towards Thor on the ground. Mimjalnir, give it back to me. Looking up at Peter, Thor shouted without hesitation. Give it back to you? If you admit defeat now, I might consider it. Looking down at Thor, Peter said in a cold voice that he hoped he could make the right decision. No, absolutely not. We, the warriors of Asgard, will never surrender to weak humans. However, how could the proud Thor admit defeat so easily, and to a human being? Well, I'm sorry. Thor had been given one chance, but he didn't cherish it. Peter, who was already very angry, no longer hesitated. He held Thor's hammer in one hand and slowly exerted force with a super strength so strong that even he himself didn't know the limit. As if sensing a strong sense of crisis, Thor's hammer continued to tremble and emit a strong wail. No, what are you going to do? As if feeling the wailing of Thor's hammer, Thor looked at Peter in great shock, and at the same time summoned his own Thor's hammer even harder in his heart. However, apart from the fact that Thor's hammer trembled a little more violently in Peter's hand, there was no sign of it being summoned back. No, you can't do that. Without Thor's hammer, I will lose my qualification to be the god of thunder. At this moment, Thor finally felt what Peter was doing, and for the first time, panic and regret appeared in his arrogant expression. Mr. Superman. Next to him, Nick Fury stepped forward and tried to stop Peter. But the next moment, seeing Peter turning to him with an unfriendly look in his eyes, he decided not to continue speaking. Accompanied by the surrounding background music. It reaches a new climax again. The Thor's hammer in Peter's hand finally couldn't bear the weight at this moment, and a crack slowly spread from Peter's fingertips to the entire hammer body. No, everyone get down. Looking at the dazzling silver light emanating from the cracks on the hammer, Nick Fury's face changed instantly. Do not want. Thor couldn't bear to watch this happen in front of him, so he used all his strength to jump up, trying to snatch Thor's hammer from Peter in the air. Humph! Looking at Thor's actions, Peter no longer hesitated and suddenly increased the strength in his hands. Boom! In an instant, Thor's hammer, which was already full of cracks, exploded. The powerful energy contained in it was released in an instant, causing an extremely terrifying energy shock wave. The powerful energy impact instantly knocked Thor, who was rushing towards Peter in the air, away. The shock wave spread in all directions. The sky, which was originally covered with thick dark clouds, was instantly dispersed by the powerful energy shock wave at this moment. The sun shone back onto the earth, illuminating a pile of silver metal fragments scattered on the ground. Asgard, in the huge and magnificent palace. Countless Asgardians are gathering here, waiting for the ceremony to officially begin. Today is the day when Odin, the father of the gods, determines the heir to the throne of Asgard. As the son of Odin, Thor is about to become the new heir to the throne of Asgard. From now on, Thor will lead and protect the entire Asgard and lead Asgard to a more prosperous future. However, as the time for the ceremony approached, Thor was still nowhere to be seen at the scene. This caused the waiting people of Asgard to talk a lot. Clang! Odin, wearing golden armor, slowly thrust Gungnir, the eternal spear in his hand, into the ground. A dull voice instantly spread throughout the entire hall, and even throughout Asgard, completely suppressing the surrounding discussions. There was silence in the hall. Queen Frigga, why hasn't Thor come yet? Odin's low voice sounded slowly, and his simple words made people feel endless majesty. Maybe I was too excited and forgot the time. Frigga's face looked a little ugly, but she still forced a smile and found an excuse for Thor. Then he looked at the figure beside him, wearing a helmet that looked like two deer horns, and said slowly, Loki, go call your brother. Is this guy really going to Midgard? Loki's face also looked bad. He suddenly remembered that more than 10 days ago, Thor had said that he wanted to go to Midgard to challenge a human. Yes, mother. Although he also didn't want Thor to inherit the throne so smoothly, he had no choice but to leave and look for Thor at this moment. However, his figure has not yet walked out of the palace. Odin, who had been sitting calmly on the throne, suddenly stood up from the throne. Who is it? The veins on the hand holding the spear of eternity bulged. Odin, who originally looked like an old man, at this moment fully demonstrated his powerful aura as the Lord of the Nine Realms. He slowly raised his head, his only remaining eye seemed to be able to see through the 9 realms. What happened? All the Asgardians present were shocked by the powerful aura Odin exuded at this moment. But the next moment, this momentum disappeared instantly. Also disappearing was Odin, who was sitting on the throne. Loki! Where on earth did your brother go? Looking at the disappearing Odin, Frigga realized that something big had happened and asked Loki anxiously. He said he was going to Earth to challenge a new god. The Earth, as Thor's hammer shattered, Thor instantly seemed to have lost his soul and sat on the ground dejectedly. At this moment, he lost the most important thing to him. But Peter in the sky did not look at the miserable Thor on the ground, but slowly raised his head and looked into the void, as if waiting for something. In an instant, a bright beam of light descended from the sky. Just like Thor descended to Earth before, it directly bombarded the ground. The beam of light slowly dissipated, and a one-eyed old man wearing golden armor and holding a golden spear appeared in front of everyone. The old man first looked at the ground, where Thor was sitting dejectedly and in a daze. Then his eyes turned and slowly looked at the fragments of Thor's hammer scattered on the ground. Finally, his eyes lifted and gazed at Peter's figure floating in the air. You are the one who destroyed Mjolnir. Chapter 45, Escape in a Panic. Yes, it's me. Facing Odin's arrogant gaze that seemed to see through everything, Peter answered without any fear or hesitation. Sure enough, if you beat the younger one, the older one will come. Unfortunately, this kind of scene might be a life or death test for other novel protagonists. But for me, the worst that can happen is that I will just take care of the old ones as well. Looking at Odin, who looked majestic and powerful but ultimately could not hide his old age, Peter was not afraid at all and even wanted to fight with Odin. However, I am helping him, so that he will not only remember that he is the god of hammer and forget the essence of his bloodline. It's not that Peter is quibbling, but in the battle just now, although it seemed like he was the one-sided crusher. But Peter also discovered the potential of Thor in this universe, which seemed to be stronger than Thor in the main universe of the movie. When he was angry and furious, Thor was able to use the power of thunder in his body unconsciously. However, perhaps because he relied too much on his hammer, he completely forgot that he was the real god of thunder, not the hammer god who relied on Thor's hammer. God of hammer. After hearing Peter's words, Odin looked at Thor behind him again, his eyes serious as if he was thinking about something. In fact, he knew very well that Thor had great potential, even surpassing himself. And precisely because of this, he felt fearful, afraid that in his old age, not only would he fail to raise a qualified ruler, but he would raise another Hela. But, no matter what, Mjolnir belongs to our Asgard. Putting aside other thoughts in his mind temporarily, Odin turned his gaze to Peter in the air again. His piercing single eye seemed to want to see through Peter completely. Odin seemed to feel a little uncomfortable as he had always been looked up to by others, but now he had to look up to others. So the next moment, without any special movement on his part, his body seemed to be lifted up by an invisible force and slowly rose into the sky, level with Peter. So? It's broken into pieces, you don't want me to compensate you, do you? Facing Odin, the Lord of the Nine Realms, Peter's tone was as relaxed as if he was facing an ordinary old man. Looking up at the two figures in the sky, Captain America, who was holding a shield on the ground, had a look of helplessness on his face. Looking at Nick Fury, who was standing beside him with a serious expression, he could only think, in a world that has changed so much, what use would waking me up have? Yeah, it's all broken. Looking at the broken pieces of Thor's hammer on the ground, Odin couldn't help but fall into deep thought. As Thor's elder, he seemed unable to act rashly, lest he be accused of bullying the weak. However, as the monarch of Asgard, he needs to regain the lost face of Asgard. Don't hesitate, why don't we just fight? I also want to see if you are still qualified to be the Lord of the Nine Realms at your age. Faced with Odin's hesitation, Peter suddenly spoke and directly challenged Odin. Human, are you provoking me? Hearing Peter's provocative words, Odin finally couldn't maintain his superior calm any longer. The eternal spear in his hand shook violently in the void, and the sharp golden tip of the spear pointed directly at Peter. The next moment, an invisible aura of terror instantly swept in all directions. Ordinary people on the ground were swept up by this powerful aura and even had the urge to kneel down immediately. Peter, who was confronted by Odin's momentum, also felt a strong and sharp momentum. Although he still had no expression on his face, his eyes gradually became serious. It is indeed Odin, the father of the gods. He is countless times stronger than Thor. It's a pity that he is just a little old. However, he did not retreat at all, his eyes fixed on Odin in front of him, with scarlet light constantly condensing in them. Humph! Seeing that Peter was not overwhelmed by the powerful aura he exuded, Odin was a little surprised, but also felt even more angry. He couldn't help but snort coldly. It wasn't a loud sound, but it spread throughout New York City in an instant. Everyone almost lost consciousness in an instant after hearing this cold snort. Above the sky, Odin's powerful aura caused the wind and clouds to spin rapidly, like a huge eye of a storm facing upside down on the ground, shrouding the entire New York City in a doomsday-like scene. However, in the next moment, a golden light curtain suddenly shot up from the ground into the sky, and then the doomsday scene condensed by Odin's powerful momentum was instantly dispelled. You want to intervene? Odin's gaze instantly turned in one direction, as if he could see through the void and see someone there. What? But the next moment, Odin instantly turned his gaze back and looked at Peter, whose eyes had been filled with scarlet energy that even frightened him. At the same time, with an extremely solemn expression, he hurriedly raised the eternal spear in his hand, pointed it at Peter in front of him, and hastily mobilized the vast power of Odin in his body to gush out along the eternal spear. Boom! Two terrifying and powerful energies, one red and one gold, collided with each other in an instant. The next moment, the terrifying energy caused the void to vibrate violently, and a terrifying roar that was countless times stronger than the one when Peter and Thor fought exploded. It was as if a bright star suddenly exploded in the sky above New York, and a terrifying energy storm swept around at a speed visible to the naked eye. Anything that came into contact with this powerful energy was instantly destroyed, not even the air was spared. On the ground, countless people looked at the strong energy blooming in the sky. They wanted to escape, but in the end, they were left with only an endless feeling of powerlessness. He could only watch helplessly as the energy that seemed to be able to destroy everything swept towards him. If I could, I would just like to go back to my previous sleeping state. Captain America raised his shield, then slowly lowered it. Click! Suddenly, a sound like glass breaking rang in everyone's ears. The next moment, in everyone's surprised gaze, the tremendous energy that was sweeping outward and almost flattening the entire New York City suddenly disappeared along with the two figures fighting in the air. Click! However, in just the blink of an eye, the space in front of everyone shattered like a mirror. A slightly embarrassed figure fell out from the broken mirror and instantly rushed towards Thor on the ground, while two scarlet beams of light followed closely behind. Father, you! Looking at Odin who was using the Spear of Eternity to block the scarlet beam, Thor's face was full of disbelief. Heimdall! Grabbing Thor with one hand, Odin shouted directly into the void. The next moment, the rainbow bridge came crashing down from the void, instantly enveloping the figures of Odin and Thor. Watching the beam of light from the rainbow bridge rapidly dissipating. Immediately afterwards, Peter rushed out from the broken void, and the scarlet beams in his eyes turned towards the dissipating rainbow bridge without hesitation. Then, along with the red beam released by Peter, Odin, and Thor's figures completely disappeared in the rainbow bridge. It took several seconds before he finally stopped the thermal vision energy that he had released with all his strength for the first time. Peter stared at the void with his eyes still emitting a creepy red light, and spoke slowly. Hey, you run pretty fast. Chapter 46 Artificial Solar Nano Battlesuit? Looking at the figure disappearing into the void, Peter waited for a while. She's not showing up yet. After waiting for a while, Peter couldn't help feeling a little strange when he saw that still no one appeared in front of him. Why is it that in the novel, the protagonist who travels to the Marvel world is targeted by her almost instantly, but when it comes to me, she seems to be avoiding me? Peter felt a little strange, but he didn't wait any longer. Instead, he picked up the fragments of Thor's hammer scattered on the ground, rushed into the sky, and left in a graceful manner under the admiring gaze of everyone. As Peter left, on the roof of a nearby building, a golden spark like electric welding slowly emerged in front of a figure in a yellow monk's robe. The sparks grew in the wind and quickly expanded into a yellow halo with a diameter of about 2 meters. The yellow-robed monk slowly walked into the circle of light, and a strange black rune appeared faintly between his eyebrows, and then disappeared. Finally, is it over? Watching Peter leave indicated that everything that happened today was temporarily over. But the hearts of everyone present could not calm down for a long time. First, a Superman who was comparable to a god on Earth appeared. Today, 2 more beings claiming to be gods appeared. The god of thunder is okay. His strength doesn't seem to be very strong, at least the top weapons of mankind can threaten him. But the old man who came afterwards was so powerful that it was somewhat scary, and the aura he exuded seemed to be able to destroy the will of ordinary people like them in an instant. The rapidly changing world gave Nick Fury a headache for a while. "Chief, what should we do now?" Coulson also felt that his worldview had collapsed and he could only place his hopes on his director. "Send people to clean up the battlefield and notify the Disaster Control Bureau to carry out post-disaster reconstruction work." Nick Fury gave the order slowly, then looked at the sky and pondered for a long time. "Also, gather all the energy experts in the Bureau and around the world to start the second phase of the Rubik's Cube research plan as soon as possible. The space war has already begun. We don't have much time left." Looking into the void, Nick Fury's eyes flashed like stars. As for him, Nick Fury then turned his attention to Captain America. "Let me find a place to rest. I may not be able to accept such a big change in the world in such a short time." Having just woken up and before he had time to fully experience this new world, he suffered such a huge shock. Even the strong-willed Captain America felt it was a little hard to accept at this moment. Meanwhile, Asgard. A beam of light came from the distant Earth, and the Rainbow Bridge slowly stopped turning. Two figures suddenly appeared in the Rainbow Bridge device. Boom! However, along with it came two beams of red energy. The spherical device instantly penetrated the Rainbow Bridge. "Your Highness Thor." Heimdall looked at Thor, who was thrown to the ground by Odin. Without having time to care about the destroyed Rainbow Bridge, he hurried to Thor and helped him up. "Humph, who told you to go to Midgard without permission? Have you forgotten the ban I issued?" Looking at Thor, Odin's face instantly became very ugly. He suppressed his inner anger and scolded Thor. Everything that happened today was caused by Thor going to Midgard without permission. "Father, my Mjolnir is broken." Facing the furious Odin, Thor seemed to have lost his soul and kept muttering to himself. "Humph, that human is right. You have long forgotten your noble lineage and the blood of gods flowing in your body." Looking at Thor, who was distraught and still in the grief of losing his hammer, Odin's eyes revealed a strong sense of disappointment. "Thor's hammer only makes it easier for you to control your own power. It doesn't make you become the god of hammers." Thinking of the title of the hammer god, Odin couldn't help but feel extremely angry, even though he had indulged in it. "Father, could it be that what he said is true?" Hearing his father's angry rebuke, Thor's dazed eyes finally brightened up again. Thinking of what the human said, that he was the real god of thunder, a glimmer of hope suddenly ignited in Thor's heart. "Humph, as a prince of Asgard, you must face your failure bravely and wash away the shame yourself in the future. Instead of being distraught like you are now." Odin watched as the battered Thor finally regained some confidence, and his tone softened but still sternly taught him. "But what happened today made me realize that you are not ready to lead the entire Asgard. God King." Seeing that Odin seemed to have made a decision, Heimdall, who was supporting Thor, wanted to plead for Thor. "No need to plead for him, this is the punishment he deserves." Odin interrupted what Heimdall was about to say, pointed the Spear of Eternity in his hand at Thor, and golden divine power gushed out. The next moment, Thor was blown away by the divine power and his figure disappeared in an instant. Next, let him reflect on his mistakes under the World Tree. After temporarily expelling Thor from Asgard, Odin seemed to become older at this moment. Heimdall looked at Odin, who was walking slowly towards his palace, and felt that his old back seemed no longer as straight as before. "By the way, once he is proficient in mastering his own divine power, we will take him to Nidavi and let the Dwarf King forge a new weapon for him." Odin left and gave instructions to Heimdall without looking back. Earth, Peter, who left the battlefield, first came to the place that attracted him before. Sure enough, it's because of the artificial sun. Looking at the laboratory that had been completely destroyed and turned into ruins by the explosion of the failed artificial sun experiment, Peter was completely certain of his guess. Artificial Sunday. Although it is artificial, the energy radiation it emits seems to be able to enhance Peter's power like a real sun. However, its efficiency is naturally not comparable to that of the real sun. But if I could always carry an artificial sun like this with me, wouldn't it be possible to constantly increase my power? A very crazy idea suddenly popped up in Peter's mind. He couldn't carry the real sun with him all the time, but an artificial sun seemed feasible. A new combination of artificial sun and nanosuit. It seems that some special preparations are needed. As he thought about it, Peter's figure instantly disappeared into the air and flew rapidly towards the Antarctic laboratory. "Open the door above the fortress." "Great, the time it takes for the nanosuit to completely cover the body has been shortened to 5 seconds. We finally made it. Peter walked slowly towards the laboratory and heard extremely excited voices coming from the laboratory. Mr. Superman, the nanosuit you need is all ready. Looking at Peter, who happened to walk into the laboratory, Reed spoke to Peter excitedly. Sorry, you may have to work overtime to revise the design of the nanosuit. At this moment, Peter instantly turned into an unscrupulous capitalist. However, you should have 2 more colleagues by then. Chapter 47, Mature Nanosuit. As Peter acted like an unscrupulous capitalist, some people showed a hint of dissatisfaction in their eyes. But in the end, no one dared to speak out against it. Anyway, I have been locked up here for more than a month, so a few more days won't make much difference. So, since no one objects, I'll take it as your consent. Seeing that no one raised any objections, Peter simply assumed that they agreed. Then he remembered their cheers just now and couldn't help asking, I just heard you say that the nanosuit was successful. Yes, Mr. Superman, it's already finished, but you want to revise it now. Reed no longer had the excitement of the successful experiment, and answered with a slightly helpless tone. When they meet a party like Superman, they can only blame themselves for being unlucky. It doesn't matter. The general direction of the nanosuit won't change anyway. It's just that the energy source of the suit needs to be replaced. It won't delay you for much time. Peter slowly explained his thoughts. Change energy source. Everyone else couldn't help but feel a little strange. The nano armor now uses the arc reactor made by Tony Stark, which is a groundbreaking achievement in energy technology. Now Peter wants to switch to other energy sources. Could it be? Why do I need to change the energy source? Isn't the arc reactor I created qualified enough? Tony, who had not objected when Peter asked everyone to work overtime, could no longer sit still. He stood up from the sofa next to him and asked Peter with a grim expression. You can question Tony about anything except his technology. Or have you found a better energy source than the arc reactor? However, Tony did not blindly question Peter's decision. He just didn't understand what energy could be more convenient than his own arc reactor. I can't say it's better than the arc reactor, I can only say it's more suitable for me. Tony's arc reactor is cold nuclear fusion, small in size and easy to carry. Dr. Otto's artificial sun is a larger device, more suitable for providing energy for larger facilities. Besides, to use that new energy technology, we need a special technology to assist. Tony finally accepted Peter's latest plan. Sometimes it's just like this, when you want something, she just finds ways not to give it to you. When you don't want it, she thinks you look down on her and insists on giving it to you, which is a headache. So, let me take a look at your latest achievements. Although the energy source of the nanosuit still needs to be redesigned, the nanosuit technology based on the arc reactor is now close to perfection. Peter also wanted to verify whether the final results achieved by everyone after more than a month met his expectations. Besides, it's time for him to replace this old battlesuit. After all, the coolness of the suit he is wearing is even better than Thor's. Okay, let me show you. Speaking of the nano combat suit, everyone present was very proud that they could be part of such a great technology research and development team. At this moment, especially those scientists who are not famous in this world, during this period of time, they finally truly realized it. The gap between true geniuses and these human elites is actually much greater than the gap between ordinary people and dogs. Arc reactor, nanotechnology, brainwave control technology, intelligent control system algorithm, incredibly powerful shock-absorbing technology. Each of these technologies is a kind of incredible black technology that they may not be able to create even if they spend their entire lives studying it. But at this moment, in a short period of time, it was successfully created from scratch by these most talented scientists in the world. And, most importantly, at this moment they have brought all these incredible technologies together to create the most powerful battlesuit in human history. Not to mention winning the Nobel Prize, the highest honor for scientists. If they could own this suit, they could even change the fate of a country. The next moment, Tony picked up a palm-sized round luminous device on the table and put it against his chest without hesitation. It is my honor that you will witness the greatest invention of this century's most talented scientist, Tony Stark. Well, they have mastered some of the techniques, but I promise that if I am given enough time, I can also do it myself. Looking at the murderous gazes of the people around him, the showy Tony finally took back his boast that everything was his fault. Stop talking nonsense. Peter urged Tony in a deep voice. Okay, I'll get started. Seeing Peter's unfriendly look, Tony finally stopped hesitating and tapped the device on his chest twice with his right hand. The next moment, the nanometal particles stored in the device were instantly activated, and under the powerful energy supply of the arc reactor, they spread over Tony's body at an extremely fast speed. In less than 5 seconds, a set of black armor with a metallic luster completely wrapped up Tony's entire body, leaving only his head exposed. The nanosuit is made up of 5 layers of nanoparticle structures wrapped in layers. The innermost layers of biological nanostructures can ensure that you have sufficient comfort and can also reduce the impact and damage to your body caused by the huge inertia when you accelerate or stop instantly. And the outermost layer is a new nanometal layer constructed from the strongest nanoparticles. It is even harder than titanium alloy and is so strong that you can withstand missile bombardment head-on without suffering any damage. As the suit quickly covered his entire body, Tony began to introduce the various properties of the nanosuit with great pride. And, most importantly, you can really control it as you wish. The next moment, Tony's battlesuit began to change rapidly. Nanoparticles flow continuously, forming various new structures at an extremely fast speed. Daggers, knives, swords, shields, hammers, axes, energy cannons and more. Basically anything you can think of, it can be quickly formed according to the ideas in your mind. While introducing, Tony even used nanoparticles in his hands to form a knife and fork for eating Western food. If you feel lonely at night, it can even become. That's enough, I don't need any of these features. Peter saw that Tony was gradually becoming uncontrollable and interrupted him directly as he continued to demonstrate these useless and somewhat fancy functions to him. As long as the nanosuit can take shape quickly and cover his entire body, it will be enough for him. His body of steel can completely ignore everything. Well, you're the boss. You have the final say. But there is one function you absolutely need. Suddenly, Tony stopped demonstrating the arbitrary properties of nanoparticles and a mysterious smile appeared on his face. The next moment, 2 flames suddenly gushed out from under his feet, causing his entire body to slowly float up. The nanoparticles behind him began to surge again, slowly forming a bright red cloak behind him, and even floated on its own in the windless laboratory. At the same time, Peter also saw that the nanoparticles on Tony's chest were flowing slowly, gradually forming a golden S-shaped pattern. I heard from them that in your family, this symbol represents hope. Chapter 48 Tony returns, seeking follow-up reading. I'm sorry, Mr. Superman, but these features were added by Mr. Stark on his own initiative. Reed looked at Tony who was so swaggering, and came to Peter with a dark face and explained. I almost forgot that Mr. Richards also applied some special technology to this suit. Seeing that Reed had actually exposed him, Tony said slowly with a turn of his eyes. Then he flew from the air to the metal wall of the laboratory and slowly raised his hand towards the wall. The next moment, a beam of azure light suddenly shot out and instantly hit the metal wall. Then the azure light slowly spread over the metal wall, forming a rectangular blue light curtain about 2 meters high and less than 1 meter wide. What is this? Peter looked at the blue light curtain on the wall, and couldn't help but feel a little curious. Hey, look at that! Tony chuckled, then went straight into the blue light curtain, which actually produced a faint ripple like the surface of water. The next moment, Tony appeared out of nowhere outside the laboratory and waved to Peter and others. This is... Peter turned and looked at Reed with a surprised look. Mr. Superman, I promise that I did not develop this technology just to escape from here. Reed was sweating profusely at this time, and hurriedly explained to Peter. It doesn't matter. I just want to know what kind of technology this is. Peter looked at Reed with a hint of admiration in his eyes. He was indeed the smartest person in the Marvel Universe. Well, this is actually an idea I had before I came here, but it was not successful due to the limitations of experimental facilities and energy. Now there are sufficient experimental equipment here, as well as powerful energy technology support such as the arc reactor, so I simply gave it a try, and I didn't expect it to be successful. But I really don't want to run away from here. After all, you are Superman, where can I escape to? Seeing that Peter didn't seem to blame him, Reed slowly began to explain. So, your skill is to allow people to pass through walls. This technology is almost like magic and it is amazing. In fact, this is just a preliminary version of my idea. Reed said slowly, which surprised everyone present even more. The basic version allows people to pass through walls, so how incredible is the ultimate vision? My original idea was to open a passage to a special space. If two interconnected devices are opened at the same time, we can ignore space and distance and go wherever we want. Reed slowly spoke out his originally crazy idea. Isn't this the technological version of a portal? At this moment, Peter couldn't help revealing a hint of surprise in his eyes when he looked at Reed. This guy is trying to create magic with technology. At this moment, Peter came up with the idea of locking Reed here forever and keeping him under strict surveillance. He finally understood the meaning of the sentence, when the Earth is not in danger, Reed is the biggest danger. Of course, if there is an organization that is more likely to cause trouble, it must be composed of Reed, Tony and others. Back to Reed, this guy is one of the smartest geniuses on Earth and has great creativity. However, the technology it created, before it succeeded, posed strong unknown dangers. For example, this idea of using technology to create a magic portal. If he unfortunately opened the door to an unknown dimension during the experiment, then the entire Earth would be in great danger. After all, in the Marvel Universe, there are all kinds of special and terrifying dimensions. The famous ones include the Dark Dimension, Crimson Dimension, Hell Dimension, and so on. If you want to experiment with those special ideas in your mind again in the future, you'd better let me know. Thinking of this, Peter could only warn Reed. However, I am quite satisfied with the nano suit you have completed. It's just that the surface is too smooth and the metallic feel is too strong. I think it could highlight my muscle contours more. The black surface is indeed cool, and looks very mysterious and majestic, but it is too monotonous. I think it can be appropriately enhanced with some graceful silver and gold lines or patterns. Anyway, I need that kind of colorful black, do you understand? Peter was quite satisfied with the nano battle suit, but it seemed that some modifications were needed in appearance. No problem, it just makes me look more low-key, I know this, I have always been very low-key. Just when others were wondering what the colorful black was, Tony, who had returned to the laboratory from outside, immediately agreed to Peter's proposal. A few hours later, a figure flew rapidly across the night sky. In Tony Stark's luxurious villa, a figure suddenly appeared on the sofa. Mr. Police! Welcome home! Seeing the familiar figure suddenly appear in the villa and hurriedly looking for a trash can, Jarvis's warning sound immediately stopped, and then the lights in the entire villa gradually lit up to welcome the return of its owner. Ahem, Jarvis, long time no see. After rinsing his mouth with the expensive red wine in the freezer, Tony collapsed on the sofa and greeted Jarvis lazily. Sir, do you need me to notify others? Jarvis' voice continued, asking for Tony's opinion. Forget it, it's too late today, let them have a good rest first, and notify them tomorrow morning. Tony thought about it and refused. Yes sir. Following Jarvis' confirmation, the villa fell into silence again. It was an unforgettable experience. Looking at the familiar ceiling, Tony kept recalling the special process of this kidnapping in his mind. Superman, nanosuit. Tony kept muttering to himself and suddenly sat up from the sofa. Jarvis. Sir, at your service at any time. Create a new research project called, Enti. Ahem, let's call it Nano Armor Mk1. Tony instantly overturned the strange urge to name something and slowly said a relatively normal name. Oh, by the way, help me purchase and search for some experimental facilities and special materials around the world. Understood, sir. The new project has been successfully created. Orders for materials and experimental facilities have been placed and are being delivered as soon as possible. Sir, do you have any other instructions? Following Jarvis's voice, Tony slowly fell into deep thought. After a long time, Tony spoke again, Jarvis, help me retrieve all the recent information about Superman. Finally, help me find all the comics about Superman. Sir, didn't you say before that you were only 3 years old? Ahem, Jarvis, I think you should learn how to speak with high emotional intelligence so as not to embarrass your boss. Tony, who can't escape the law of true fragrance, said that as long as he doesn't feel embarrassed, others will be embarrassed. Yes sir, I am trying. Nanotechnology, you really have provided a good direction for my future. Thinking about the nano battle suit he had experienced in the laboratory today, Tony couldn't help but show a hint of intoxication on his face. Chapter 49, Is there any hope for magic plus armor? A hero of all mankind? A god on earth? And a creature from outer space, a guy who calls himself the god of thunder. As Tony continues to learn about the tremendous changes that have taken place in the world during the month since he was kidnapped. Even though I was mentally prepared, I still couldn't help but feel shocked. Haha, how ridiculous. That abominable guy was portrayed as a hero of mankind. Are those politicians crazy? What was most incredible to Tony was that the guy who kidnapped him was actually promoted by the government and the media as a hero who saved all mankind. Sir, according to the information I found online, Superman has firmly topped the popularity charts in all countries since his appearance, surpassing countless Hollywood stars. The positive reviews for Superman are also over 99.9999%. The vast majority of people admit that Superman's existence makes their lives better. Some even think that as long as Superman doesn't destroy the Earth, he can be called a hero of mankind, and use the classic comic book event Injustice Superman as an excuse. That's enough. I don't want to hear any more about this guy's heroic deeds. Tony's face was serious, interrupting the information Jarvis had gathered. I just want to know, in the comics, what kind of weakness does this guy have? Although Superman only kidnapped himself and made him a laborer, he did not really hurt himself. But at this moment, Tony must be prepared to face Superman again. Nano armor is his future research direction. But relying solely on ordinary nano armor is naturally not enough to fight against the powerful Superman. Therefore, studying Superman's weaknesses is an indispensable process. Sir, Superman's weaknesses are introduced in the comics, including but not limited to kryptonite, the red sun, mind control, magic, and the kindness in his heart. Kryptonite? It's hard to find on Earth. It's not even certain whether it exists. Red sun? This can be simulated, but I don't know if it will work. Mind manipulation? Never mind, that's ruled out. As for the goodness of heart, does that guy have it? Tony was skeptical. Well, there is also magic, but does magic really exist in this world? If it was before he was kidnapped, Tony would definitely scoff at the existence of magic, but now, his heart longs for the real existence of magic. Jarvis, use magic as the keyword and conduct a detailed search around the world. Magic plus technological armor, it seems to be very promising. I'd like to give it a try. If magic really exists, can the combination of magic and nano armor really compete with that guy? Sir, I need to remind you that Mr. Superman has a strong hearing ability. Everything you do now may be. Fuck, Jarvis, why didn't you remind me earlier? Tony looked out the window hurriedly when he heard that. He finally breathed a sigh of relief when he saw no familiar figure flying over. Haha, this guy really wants to put up an unnecessary resistance. However, let him do whatever he wants. In the end, I'm the one who benefits. Magic armor? Supreme Sorcerer Iron Man? In fact, I am also looking forward to the strange scene of you wearing armor, with a magic whip in your right hand and a magic shield in your left hand. Besides, I'm looking forward to taking this thing apart. Will it be fun? After stopping monitoring Tony's villa, Peter raised a smile full of anticipation. In fact, even if you use your butt to think, you can know that Tony is an uneasy guy. Now that he has been kidnapped, it would be out of his character if he didn't make trouble when he returned. After all, this is why Tony became Iron Man. However, the fate of Tony in this universe has changed, and it should not be as simple as just becoming Iron Man. Next, we will continue to perfect the suit. The key lies in the first generation of Ant-Man, Dr. Pym, and his Pym particles. Peter slowly thought about his next plan, in which Dr. Pym and his Pym particles were the key. It has to be said that sometimes some of the black technologies in the Marvel Universe are beyond human understanding. The Pym particles developed by Dr. Pym are one of the most incredible black technologies, even more incredible than nanotechnology. It can reduce the distance between molecules of matter, thus shrinking originally huge objects to a very small size. It can even enable people to travel into the quantum realm, which can hardly be described by technology and is even more mysterious than magic. But the Pym particles are not in a hurry. They can't run away anyway. The reason why Peter sent Tony back to the villa early was because of the upcoming arrival of Dr. Pym. After all, Dr. Pym and the Stark family have some misunderstandings that have not been resolved, and there is a high possibility that the two will fight if they work together. Moreover, Tony's technological contribution to the nano-armor suit is almost over. Tony's presence is basically not needed for subsequent research. Of course, if he is really needed somewhere, the worst that can happen is that we can just tie him back. However, before dealing with Dr. Pym, it seems that we need to deal with Dr. Otto first. In Peter's mind, the image of Dr. Octopus with 4 metal tentacles slowly emerged. At the same time, at Dr. Otto's home, Dr. Otto, who had just been released on bail from the police station, returned home dejected. "Dear Otto, are you all right?" His wife, who was eagerly waiting at home, ran to him and asked with concern the moment she saw Otto. "Rose, I'm fine." They defined the explosion as an experimental accident. Fortunately, no casualties were caused. At this moment, Dr. Otto's face was full of fatigue. "Unfortunately, my experiment failed, and my lifelong dream was completely shattered. And amid the exhaustion, it is even harder to hide the sadness and pain brought by the failed experiment. They gave almost everything they had for this experiment. Bringing endless energy to mankind was his lifelong dream. However, at this moment, as the experiment failed, his dream was shattered. It's okay, Otto. You must cheer up. At least we are still alive and have a chance to continue the experiment and realize our dreams." His wife comforted Otto, ignoring the strange mechanical tentacles behind him, and slowly hugged Otto. "That's right, we are still alive, we still have a chance. There was nothing wrong with my experimental process. I calculated the radiation, energy, and even the possible gravitational effects. The reason why the experiment failed is that the experimental facilities were not strong enough to withstand such a huge amount of energy. As long as we can find stronger materials, I can conduct larger nuclear fusion experiments." Otto cheered up with his wife's comfort. "In the near future, we will forge a shining star with our own hands in front of everyone's witness." Otto looked at the bright starry sky at night and the bright moon hanging in the sky, and spoke slowly, and the tentacles behind him danced as if to celebrate. "The sun's rays will surely shine in this city. Eternal light will completely illuminate this starry sky." Chapter 50 gives Drive Otto a little shock, seeking follow-up reading. Haha, Dr. Otto has great ambitions. Suddenly, a figure quickly streaked across the night sky and instantly appeared in the air in front of the two people, looking down at them. "You are, Mr. Superman." Looking up at the sudden appearance of the strange figure, Dr. Otto was very nervous at first, and used the metal tentacles behind him to instantly protect him and his wife. However, when he saw that the person coming was the famous Superman, the tension on Dr. Otto's face disappeared. "I'm sorry, Dr. Otto, I was delayed by something today, so I couldn't make it." Peter sounded slightly apologetic. "I understand. I saw the news. You were fighting alien creatures and protecting the entire city." Dr. Otto has some complicated feelings towards Superman. During the experiment, he somewhat blamed Superman for his sudden appearance and stealing his limelight. It attracted away all the media and reporters in the laboratory at that time, which indirectly caused his experiment to fail so quickly, although failure was inevitable. However, when he later learned that the other party was guarding the entire city and fighting against alien creatures who claimed to be gods, the slight resentment in his heart disappeared, and he was filled with admiration for him instead. He thinks Superman is the real hero of mankind. "But you came to see me now, is there something you need me to do?" Dr. Otto is smart enough to know that a being like Superman would not pay attention to an ordinary human being for no reason. And at this moment, he came to find me, he must have other purposes. "For example, let me help you complete an experiment." Without any hesitation, Dr. Otto guessed the real purpose of Peter's visit to him. "You are right. I am also very concerned about the artificial sun experiment you conducted today. I think this nearly eternal energy source is the key to unlocking the future of mankind." Peter is not sure whether it can open up the future of mankind, nor does he want to know. He only knows that the artificial sun can activate the powerful genes in his body, making him stronger every moment. So, no matter what, the artificial sun is something he must have in his hands. "Thank you very much for your attention and recognition, Mr. Superman, but you also know that my experiment today failed." Dr. Otto had a complicated expression on his face, as if he was sad about the failure of the experiment. "Although today's experiment failed, weren't you still full of confidence and ready to conduct the next experiment?" Peter saw that Otto's behavior at the moment seemed to refuse to help him complete the experiment. "Besides, given your current situation, I'm afraid it's difficult to support you to continue to complete your dream of experimenting, right?" At this moment, the news of Drive Otto's experiment failure had almost spread throughout the academic and investment circles. Capitalists are so realistic. When they see that you are of no use, they will kick you away. Therefore, it will be very difficult for him to regain investment of money and resources in the future. Are you going to rob a bank to support your experiment without telling your wife? After hearing Peter's last words, the serious expression on Dr. Otto's face was instantly shattered. In fact, he even thought about using the powerful tentacles behind him to rob a bank. After all, he was the only one who knew his current situation. If the experiment failed, he would face huge compensation to investors. I am afraid that even the home behind him, which is full of memories of him and his wife and is the most precious thing in their hearts, will no longer exist. Well, Mr. Superman, it seems I have no reason to refuse. Finally, Dr. Otto looked at Peter, who was standing high above him, spoke slowly, and gave up his insistence. Don't worry, you won't regret your decision at this moment. Looking at Otto, who was saying goodbye to his wife with his eyes, Peter's figure floating in the air slowly landed in front of the two of them, then he grabbed Dr. Otto's body and rushed into the sky in an instant. Only Dr. Otto's wife was left staring into space for a long time without looking away. Antarctica, under the ice cave. So, this is your fortress of solitude. Floating in the air, Dr. Otto performed much better than the others brought by Peter. Not only did I not feel the strong urge to vomit, I even had the leisure to carefully observe the surrounding environment. The fortress of solitude? No, it can only be regarded as a simple resting place. Peter was no longer satisfied with the construction plan of the fortress of solitude, he had other plans in mind. Let's go. I'll introduce you to some friends, or colleagues. You may have to work together for a while. However, they are all very smart, and I believe you should have many common topics. Opening the huge metal door above the laboratory, Peter took Dr. Otto slowly into the laboratory. As soon as he landed on the ground, Otto saw a dozen people in front of him, including men and women, old and young, who seemed to be waiting for his arrival. Hello, I'm new here. I'm Otto Octavius. Hello, I'm Reed Richards, Dr. Otto. Nice to meet you. I've read your research papers on nuclear physics a long time ago. Looking at the dancing mechanical tentacles behind Dr. Otto, everyone present couldn't help but feel a little weird. However, Reed calmed himself down and was the first to greet Dr. Otto. After that, the others introduced themselves, and the scene fell silent, with everyone's eyes turning to Peter next to them. After all, Peter has the final say here at the moment. Okay, now that everyone knows each other, we should talk about our next plan. As Peter spoke, he placed his hands on his chest, and the next moment, the nanoparticles that formed the nano battlesuit on his body began to shrink rapidly. Under Dr. Otto's shocked gaze, in just a few seconds all of them gathered in the luminous device on his chest. What is this? Nanotechnology. Although Dr. Otto's major is nuclear physics, he has a good understanding of basic nanotechnology. Incredible, has nanotechnology developed to this extent? It was precisely because of this understanding that Drive. Otto found it even more incredible. Wait, this is... However, compared to the incredible nanotechnology that made him feel, when he actually saw the glowing nano-container, the expression on his face instantly became mixed. Miniaturized arc reactor? How is this possible? No, this is absolutely impossible. Could it be that the direction I've been researching is a dead end? At this moment, he even became a little overwhelmed. It's as if the answer you've been searching for your entire life is now right in front of you, but you discover that the direction you've been researching was the wrong one from the beginning. The energy of the Sunday. Looking at Dr. Otto's eyes full of disbelief and hesitation, Peter slowly placed the arc reactor in his hand into his. It's all in my hands. As if looking at the most perfect work of art, Dr. Otto stared at the arc reactor in his hand with burning eyes and slowly continued with Peter's words. Then his eyes suddenly turned to Peter. So, you called me here just to attack me. Chapter 51. Your villagers shared nuclear fusion with you. At this moment, Dr. Otto looked at the arc reactor in his hand, feeling a little bit of excitement that his ultimate dream had been fulfilled, but also a little bit of regret that it was not accomplished by his own hands. Can you tell me who created this? Dr. Otto wanted to know who had fulfilled his lifelong wish. It's Tony Stark. What? That playboy? Dr. Otto looked a little surprised. He naturally knew the famous Tony Stark. Well, then he is really a genius who can surpass Einstein. Although I feel a little ashamed of what Tony, a playboy, an arms dealer, has done, I cannot help but admire his genius mind at this moment. There is already such convenient clean energy, why did you bring me here? Dr. Otto was very confused. Although the arc reactor in front of him might be less efficient in generating energy than his own research results. But it is convenient enough, the energy is very clean, and there is no need to worry about radiation leakage. It is exactly the clean and portable energy that humans idealize. Dr. Otto, you don't have to underestimate yourself. I brought you here because I was impressed by your research. Although the arc reactor is convenient and clean enough, it has a fatal flaw. Forget it, these have nothing to do with you. Now, let's discuss in detail how to make your experiment truly successful. In short, what Peter needs at this moment is not a convenient and clean arc reactor, but an artificial sun like a star. So, you have already considered all possible factors that may cause failure in your previous experiments, including radiation, harmful rays, energy leakage, and possible gravitational effects. But it still failed in the end. As Dr. Otto explained his experimental theories and processes, the talented scientists present soon fully understood them. So, it should be because the outer protective material is not strong enough that the experiment failed. Reed was the first to present the reasons for the failure of his analysis. Yes, in my opinion, it should be because of the material. Otto looked at Reed with surprise in his eyes. He didn't expect that this unknown guy was so smart. Although it is only a small artificial sun, the intense heat and radiation it emits are not something that ordinary materials can withstand. Moreover, it will even induce a strong gravitational effect. Unless someone develops a superconductor that is strong enough and can still operate normally under ultra-high temperatures, this artificial sun experiment is simply uncontrollable. Korean female scientist Zhao Halen, who was present at the event, also expressed her opinions. Room temperature superconductivity itself is a problem that has troubled mankind for decades, let alone a superconductor that can still operate normally in such a harsh environment. This is a material that is almost impossible to find. Everyone present knew that this was an almost impossible scientific challenge. Is my experimental theory a failed idea from the beginning? At this moment, even Dr. Otto couldn't help but wonder if the experiment he had been working on for half his life was wrong from the beginning. No, Dr. Otto, you are a true genius. There is nothing wrong with your experimental theory. It is just that the development of human materials science has limited the possibility of completing your experiment. No one present looked down upon Dr. Otto's ideas and theories. However, unless we can find a special material that is hard enough and does not transfer heat, there may still be a chance. You mean, vibranium? Someone slowly spoke out the materials that met this condition. Vibranium can indeed work, but unfortunately, even if all the vibranium in the world were added together, I'm afraid it wouldn't be enough to complete this experiment. Yes, vibranium is indeed too scarce. Some people lament the rarity of this special material. No, actually I know a place with a large amount of vibranium resources. What, Mr. Superman, are you telling the truth? At this moment, the most excited person present was undoubtedly Dr. Otto after hearing what Peter said. You said so, Princess Shuri from Wakanda. Peter did not answer Dr. Otto, but slowly looked at Shuri who had not spoken a word. What? Wakanda has a lot of vibranium? How is that possible? This news is as unbelievable as if your villagers shared their nuclear fusion technology with you. A few days ago, humans had almost never set foot on the far side of the moon. Suddenly a small spaceship appeared and slowly landed here. The coordinates are correct. But is there really a high-tech civilization here? Looking at the desolate lunar surface with only dust and rocks in front of him, T'Challa, wearing a special vibranium battle suit, found it hard not to doubt what his father said to him. But my father would never lie to me. In the end, T'Challa chose to believe his father. The next moment, he slowly took out a fluorescent diamond-shaped crystal through his vibranium suit. I hope this thing is really useful. Suddenly, as soon as he took it out, the diamond-shaped crystal seemed to be attracted by some strange force and slowly floated up from his hand. What on earth is it? Looking at the crystal that suddenly floated up, T'Challa's eyes were full of surprise. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of the Black Panther and directly grabbed the diamond-shaped crystal floating in the air. You're from Earth? A guy with light green skin who looked a little strange slowly asked the vigilant T'Challa. Yes. I am from Wakanda. My father is King T'Chaka. He asked me to come here, to find a city. Looking at the figure that suddenly appeared in front of him, T'Challa's vigilant eyes were filled with a hint of surprise, and then he slowly introduced himself. Wakanda? It's been a long time since any human came from Earth. However, since you have the token, The figure in front of him seemed to find it very strange, but after he looked at T'Challa carefully, he slowly opened his hands. Well, welcome to Adalan. As the person in front of him moved, the originally empty moon scene behind him suddenly changed. The space in front of T'Challa slowly twisted, and it seemed as if their Wakanda's protective shield slowly opened. The next moment, in front of T'Challa's shocked eyes, a huge stone door gradually appeared in front of him. Through the stone gate, T'Challa could see an extremely huge city inside. Is this what my father was talking about, Adalan? It looks somewhat retro, like a huge city built of stones. At this moment, T'Challa finally confirmed that everything his father said was true. Chapter 52 The Strongest Crooked-Mouthed Dragon King, asking for monthly tickets and follow-up reading. Africa, Wakanda. In this area where few outsiders have ever set foot, a swift figure flashed through the void again. Your Majesty, that Superman is here again. Because Peter did not hide his own reasons. In addition, Wakanda has relatively advanced satellites and detectors, so Peter was successfully discovered by them almost as soon as he appeared in Wakanda's airspace. Assemble all guards immediately. After hearing the report from the captain of the guards, T'Chaka suddenly stood up from the throne. Then he walked out of the palace without hesitation. By the way, let T'Challa notify our most distinguished guest. Before leaving the palace, T'Chaka continued to give instructions. Haha, it seems like you are prepared this time. Above Wakanda, Peter floated in the air, looking calmly at the Wakandan troops that were constantly gathering in the protective shield below. Then I'll give you a chance to resist with all your strength. So that you can understand who is the boss on this earth. Peter did not rush into the protective shield while they were gathering, but just floated in the air nonchalantly, giving them enough time to prepare. After waiting for several minutes, Peter saw that the Wakanda army below had assembled. The densely packed figures were divided into several columns, and there seemed to be several ethnic groups. At a rough glance, there were at least tens of thousands of people. No matter how many ants there are, they can hardly kill an elephant. Looking at the dense crowds of people, Peter was not afraid at all. Besides, I'm not an elephant, I'm Godzilla. The next moment, Peter descended without hesitation. When fully activated, the protective shield that could easily withstand missile bombardment was as fragile as paper in front of him, and a huge gap was easily torn apart. This guy is really so scary. Among the Wakanda guard team, some people looked at the figure who tore the protective shield so easily, their eyes full of disbelief. No matter how powerful our opponents are, the warriors of Wakanda will never retreat. Captain Okoye of the Royal Guard stood behind the king and spoke courageously, inspiring every Wakanda warrior behind him. What on earth does this guy want? T'Chaka looked at the figure floating in the air, his eyes flickering as he thought about the real purpose of Superman's visit this time. At this moment, Peter's body completely ignored the gravity and just floated in the air, slowly descending until it was only a dozen meters away from the ground, then it finally stopped descending. The jet-black nano-armor on his body reflected the golden light of the sun, and the bright red cloak behind him was fluttering in the wind. In the golden lines on the body, liquid-like energy is constantly flowing. A strong sense of oppression filled the hearts of almost everyone present. Even Wakanda's most elite warriors felt their breathing quicken at this moment, as if they had seen a real god descend. Haha, King Trika, you have gathered so many people. Is this a welcome ceremony for me? The oppressive figure spoke in an extremely relaxed tone, looking down at T'Chaka who was leading the way below. If you are our friend, then this is a solemn ceremony to welcome you. Looking up at the figure in the void, T'Chaka's eyes showed no fear at all, and he spoke in a deep voice, his tone containing the majesty unique to a king. But if you are our enemy, then this will be. Then, T'Chaka's tone turned slightly colder, and all the Wakandan warriors behind him also raised their vibranium spears and pointed them directly at the figure in the void. Haha, your confidence at this moment, doesn't it come from that guy? Hearing what T'Chaka said, Peter did not show any anger, but raised his eyes slightly and looked into the distance. I saw a wisp of golden energy floating towards here from a distance at an extremely fast speed, and it arrived above the Wakanda army almost instantly. Then it passed over everyone and floated to King T'Chaka. The next moment, the wisp of energy that looked like golden smoke instantly gathered into two figures. No, there should be three, but only two of them are human. There was another figure, a dog that looked bigger than an ordinary person. Among the two, one of them is the king's son, T'Challa, wearing the Black Panther costume. And another guy, also in a black coat, was petting the huge dog affectionately. Welcome, my friend. King T'Chaka greeted the visitor warmly. But she didn't get a response from him, instead she slowly placed her hand over her chest as a courtesy gesture. Then, the man slowly turned his gaze and looked at Peter in the void. Mr. Superman, although you are very powerful, Black Bolt, the leader of the Inhumans, possesses equally powerful strength. He can destroy everything just by moving his mouth. So, I hope you can return my daughter to me now, so that we can still be friends. Seeing Black Bolt coming, the old king seemed to gain confidence. He looked up at Peter in the void and said in a deep voice. At the same time, Black Bolt next to him also curled up the corners of his mouth and revealed a very confident smile. What mouth? Looking at Black Bolt's extremely confident smile, which was like that of the crooked-mouthed Dragon King, Peter really wanted to reply to him as if in some underworld scene. Unfortunately, Peter at this time was not powerful enough to modify reality at will. However, the next moment, Peter's figure slowly fell to the ground, and slowly walked towards the old king and others. Your daughter, I need her to help me with something, so I can't give it back to you for the time being. But I want to see how a mute can stop me. Back off. Looking at Peter who was getting closer. Black Bolt slowly opened his mouth with a helpless look on his face. The next moment, a powerful breath visible to the naked eye suddenly gushed out of his mouth, instantly enveloping Peter's figure. The powerful sonic waves easily destroyed the ground behind Peter, forming a huge ravine that stretched as far as the eye could see. Why don't you avoid it? Seeing that Peter didn't make any evasive move, Black Bolt showed a surprised expression on his face. Because I'm not afraid. Powerful sonic waves continued to surge around Peter, but they were completely unable to break through his iron body, and it seemed that there was no way to stop Peter. How can this be? Seeing that his sonic waves that could destroy everything were completely unable to cause any harm to Peter in front of him, and couldn't even stop him from moving forward, Black Bolt felt extremely surprised at that moment. I have to admit, you are quite arrogant. He walked slowly to Black Bolt step by step, and in front of Black Bolt's shocked gaze, he raised his hand, blocked his mouth that was spewing pseudosonic waves, pinched his jaw, and slowly lifted him up. Unfortunately, it's of no use to me. Then he gently exerted force and threw the whole person out. Seeing that its master was in danger, the big dog suddenly turned into a wisp of golden energy again and floated away quickly. No, you hypocritical guy, where did you take my sister? At this moment, the Black Panther next to him couldn't help it, opened its sharp claws and pounced towards Peter. However, the next moment, two scarlet lights flashed, and Black Panther's body was knocked out at an extremely fast speed, directly disrupting the Wakanda army formation behind him. So, can we talk now? With a terrifying scarlet light emanating from his eyes, Peter slowly turned his gaze to the old king and spoke in a deep voice. Chapter 53 The sun's radiance will illuminate the night sky. Next, there was some friendly nuclear talks. Peter successfully brought the first batch of raw vibranium ore from Wakanda. Well, not too much, just a few dozen tons, less than 100 tons. Father, are we going to let him go so easily? My sister. Looking at the figure flying away rapidly holding a small vibranium mountain, T'Challa's eyes were full of unwillingness. T'Challa, for the safety of Wakanda, we have no choice. Naturally, the old king also didn't want so much vibranium to fall into the hands of outsiders. But not long ago, they all truly experienced the power of Superman. Even their most powerful ally, Black Bolt, the leader of the Inhumans, could not harm them in the slightest. You have to know that Black Bolt's sonic waves are so powerful that they can even destroy vibranium, but they are completely unable to harm the opponent's steel body. Perhaps only a true god can contend with such a powerful being. No, the last guy who claimed to be the god of thunder was easily defeated by him, and even the Thor's hammer in his hand was crushed. Besides, he just said that your sister is fine, she just needs to do something for him. At this moment, it was difficult to tell whether the old king was happy or sad from his expression. He looked at the sky in the distance where the figure had completely disappeared. After pondering for a long time, he finally said slowly, if we can become partners with him, or even friends. The old king paused, then continued. Then it will be possible to fulfill the dreams of our Wakanda kings of all generations. Let the whole world know about Wakanda's power and prosperity. And there is no need to fear that doing so will bring war to Wakanda. Wakanda has grown from a backward farming tribe to the technologically advanced country it is today, entirely relying on the abundant vibranium resources underground. However, because of its rich vibranium resources, Wakanda has to choose to hide itself to avoid becoming the target of plunder from the whole world and bringing war to the people of Wakanda. And at this moment, the old king seems to have finally found an opportunity to open Wakanda to the world while still ensuring that the peace of Wakanda is not destroyed. Father, do you really want to do this? A hint of worry crossed T'Challa's face. No, you will lead Wakanda to true prosperity. Let the whole world know how powerful the real Wakanda is. The old king withdrew his gaze and looked at his outstanding son with expectation. On the other side, although he was holding dozens or even hundreds of tons of vibranium ore in one hand, he was even holding a small sonic device specially used by Wakanda to passivate and purify vibranium in the other hand. But Peter didn't slow down much. Wherever he passed, even if some people felt that the sky suddenly darkened, as if a plane was flying in the air, but when they looked up, Peter's figure holding the vibranium had disappeared into the sky. Soon, Peter returned to the scientific research base in Antarctica. After using thermal vision to enlarge the hole above the ice cave a little, it is enough to allow the vibranium ore to enter. Peter slowly opened the metal door above the base. He's finally back. At this moment, the scientists had been waiting below for a long time. They were eager to know whether what Peter said was true. Vibranium is an extremely precious resource, and some of them may not even be qualified to see real vibranium in their entire lives. However, as the metal door above was opened, their faces froze instantly when they looked at the scene before them. So, this is what he said, go get back 100 million bits of vibranium. Seeing Peter holding up a mountain of vibranium ore in one hand, everyone present except Shurui was stunned with shock. Boom! Following a dull but very strong voice, everyone who was in a daze was finally awakened. Mr. Superman, this. Otto looked excitedly at the huge vibranium ore in front of him that almost filled the entire cave. He had no idea what to say at this moment. 1 gram of vibranium is worth more than tens of thousands of dollars, and it is priceless. There are probably dozens of tons of vibranium here now. Even the raw ore still needs to be refined, but judging from its purity, there will be more than 10 tons of vibranium left after purification. How much is this worth? Others were not much better than Dr. Otto. With just a rough calculation, they found that they might not be able to make that much money in their lifetime. Don't just stand there, Princess Shurui. You should be very familiar with this device. Teach them. I hope to see the artificial sun outer protective device made of vibranium as soon as possible. Peter interrupted everyone's greedy gaze, slowly placed the huge box in his hand on the ground, and then spoke to Shurui. Then without stopping, he rushed straight into the sky and left. Ahem, Princess Shuri, are you guys in Wakanda still in need of high-level talents? I want to immigrate. Peter's words awakened the dazed scientists present, and then everyone looked at Shurui as if they were looking at a local rich man. Soon, more than 10 days passed. Once again, a rapidly flying figure passed through the sky above Antarctica. It seems that they have indeed completed what I asked them to do. When Peter entered the ice cave, he saw at a glance that the vibranium ore, which was originally as big as a hill, was now only half left. Most of it should have been passivated and purified to make real vibranium. Peter didn't stay here for too long. He turned around and slowly walked towards the laboratory. With the protective device made of vibranium and the new protective shield solution provided by Princess Shuri, I think this artificial sun experiment will never fail again. As soon as he entered the laboratory, Peter heard an excited voice coming from inside. I heard you are ready. Walking slowly into the laboratory, Peter saw at a glance a huge silver spherical device in the center of the laboratory, which was nearly 2 meters high and had 5 metal arms like human fingers, pointing upwards in a virtual grip. Mr. Superman, you are here. Dr. Otto was the first to greet Peter excitedly. He knew very well in his heart that this moment and the opportunity to fulfill his dream were all given by Peter. You seem to have improved this device. Peter was present when Dr. Otto conducted the experiment last time. He remembered that the experimental device only had 4 metal arm guards that looked like fingers. However, now it has become 5 lines, which looks more stable and tight. Yes, after discussion, we made some improvements based on Dr. Otto's original work. Reed spoke up and answered Peter's question. Moreover, the energy shield has also been improved this time, using the solution provided by Princess Shurui. As he spoke, Reed looked at Shurui standing beside him. Ever since she learned that Shurui's family had an entire vibranium mine, she instantly became the object of flattery by almost everyone present. After all, no one knows whether they will need some vibranium to assist their scientific research in the future. So, Dr. Otto, are you confident enough to complete this artificial sun experiment? Peter turned his eyes to Dr. Otto, who looked excited. Of course, I will definitely not fail this time. Hearing the question, Dr. Otto's originally excited expression turned very serious, but in just a moment, he became firm and answered without hesitation. Well, since you are so confident. Peter hesitated for a moment, then spoke slowly. Then I will let you fulfill your dream in front of the whole world and everyone's attention. In a few days, the sun's radiance will illuminate the entire New York night sky. Chapter 54, The Real Attention. In the underground laboratory of Tony Stark's villa. Jarvis, prepare for the 12th experiment and record the relevant data. At this moment, Tony, who was wearing red and gold metal armor in the basement, slowly spoke to Jarvis. Ding! The golden mask slammed over Tony's face. The next moment, the armor on his body began to flow like liquid and constantly changed into different shapes. Nano-energy cannons, nano-metal shields, nano-metal swords, etc. Various hot weapons and cold weapons condensed from nanoparticles are rapidly changing. Sir, there is nothing wrong with the nanoparticle transformation algorithm. The nanostructure is very stable, and the transformation time interval has been shortened to within 5 milliseconds. You are truly a genius. As the nano armor continued to change, Jarvis also flattered Tony with high emotional intelligence. 5 milliseconds? It's not the limit, but it's probably going to be hard to break through it. Tony frowned slightly, but he finally understood that the time had almost been shortened to the limit. Jarvis, prepare to begin testing new weapon systems. As soon as Tony finished speaking, the nanoparticles on his arm changed rapidly, and almost in the blink of an eye it turned into an energy cannon with a strange shape but emitting a dangerous aura. There is a faint red energy constantly flowing in the muzzle, like a captivating eye. Gathering energy. Following Tony's order, a strong red energy light instantly emanated from the muzzle of the gun. The red energy continued to rotate in the muzzle, as if brewing even more powerful energy, and the red light emitted became more and more dazzling. Finally, almost the entire basement was filled with strong red light. The energy in the energy cannon seemed to have reached its limit. Then, Tony pointed the energy cannon at a titanium alloy plate several tens of centimeters thick in the distance. The next second, a bright red beam of light instantly gushed out from the muzzle. The terrifying red energy beam pierced through the titanium alloy plate that was tens of centimeters thick almost instantly, and then continued to pierce through the wall behind it. It even pierced through the ground outside the villa's foundation, creating a big hole on the coast. The remaining red energy beams disappeared along the sea surface. Sir, the red sun energy cannon is functioning normally, and its power has increased nearly 7 times compared to the last time. I don't know if this thing can break that guy's steel body. Although the power is so terrifying, looking at Tony's expression, it still seems that it is not enough. Forget it, let's just leave it this way for now. The energy of the palladium reactor can only support this level of consumption. The arc reactor is such a terrifying energy source, but at this moment, Tony thinks it is not enough. By the way, Jarvis, I asked you to collect information about magic. Have you made any progress? Tony tapped the arc reactor on his chest, and the next moment the nano armor on his body turned back into nanoparticles and was retracted into the nano storage device in less than 3 seconds. Sir, after screening and excluding online fraud, there are thousands of pieces of information that may contain magic. After further investigation, there are only 87 pieces left. Professionals are being dispatched to investigate. It is estimated that it will take about 10 days to complete all the investigations. Why so long? Tony asked as he slowly sat down on the couch and drank some wine. Because some of the information is located in remote areas, such as Nepal, it is very difficult to check it. Nepal? That's pretty far away. By the way, is there anything new recently? It seems like I haven't seen you all for a long time. As soon as he got home, Tony locked himself in the laboratory. Friends and investigators who came to visit him or asked him where he had been were all rejected by Pepper, who he had asked to end her vacation. Now that the nano armor has been completed and its weapon system has been updated, Tony decided to go out and relax. Sir, there is an event that I think you will be interested in. Oh? Jarvis, you've never answered me so confidently. Tony was intrigued. As an artificial intelligence, Jarvis rarely used definite modifiers. A few days ago, nuclear physicist Dr. Otto announced to the world that he had solved the energy dilemma facing mankind. And he is ready to complete his experiment in front of all mankind. As soon as Jarvis' voice came, a smirk appeared on Tony's face. Oh? Dr. Otto? Didn't his last artificial sun experiment fail? I reproduced his experimental process. Without special materials that are strong enough, his experiment would have been almost impossible to succeed. So, how can you be sure that I will be interested in this? Tony found it strange that Jarvis didn't seem to make such a mistake. Sir, Dr. Otto once said that during the experiment, the hero of mankind, Superman, will also be present. What? That guy is going to? Tony stood up directly, not even noticing that the red wine in his glass had spilled all over the floor. Time and location. Tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, on the Hudson River, on the Statue of Liberty Island. Hiss, this guy really knows how to choose a place. Early the next morning, the area around the Statue of Liberty, which was already extremely prosperous, became even more prosperous. Not only the entire island is filled with people who have arrived here early and are waiting to start the experiment at night. Even on the nearby Hudson River, the entire island was tightly surrounded by countless boats, in circles. Almost all New York citizens who heard the news, and even people from nearby cities, rushed over. Because this is the first time Superman publicly participates in a public event. It is said that the president has changed his schedule and is preparing to visit the site of the most anticipated experiment in human history. As for other walks of life, including politicians, businessmen, billionaires, and even the military, countless people came. At this moment, there are even armed military personnel on the scene maintaining order. Countless people and countless media are focusing on this. Countless helicopters and military fighter jets are circling in the sky, waiting for the experiment to begin in more than 10 hours. Time passed slowly, and everyone was getting a little impatient waiting. The sun finally slowly set below the horizon from the west. Even as night fell, countless lights flashed on the scene, instantly illuminating the entire island. It's finally about to start. This guy is even more famous than me. On the island, under the protection of his bodyguard Happy, Tony was sitting leisurely on the sofa, drinking red wine and waiting for the experiment to begin. Finally, the last hour passed. Boom! A strong sonic boom came from the distant sky. Look, it's Superman, he's actually here. The next moment, everyone noticed that there was a human figure above the statue of the goddess. The black battlesuit on his body looked extremely dazzling even in the dark night, with golden lines flowing across his body. The cloak behind him was also fluttering in the wind. Superman! The hero of mankind! Instantly, when they saw that extremely familiar figure, everyone present burst into extremely loud cheers. Countless media outlets also focused their cameras on the majestic figure above the Statue of Liberty. Experiments that would change the future of humanity have never been their focus, all they care about is Superman. What is Superman doing? Amid the puzzled gazes of countless people, the figure was seen slowly approaching the Statue of Liberty. It's incredible. Under the incredible gazes of everyone present, Superman easily lifted the Statue of Liberty with one hand. Then, a strangely shaped flying vehicle suddenly came from a distance and slowly landed on the base of the lifted statue. The hatch of the aircraft opened, and several figures pushed out a special device that attracted everyone's attention. They placed it on the base of the statue, replacing the original position of the Statue of Liberty. However, many people on the islands could not see the preparation process above. But at this moment, they knew that the much-anticipated experiment was finally about to begin. Chapter 55 The Brightest Star in the Night Sky. Dear audience, we meet again. Today, oh my god, Superman actually came. Wait. Incredible, he lifted the Statue of Liberty with ease. What is he doing? Oh, I see. It looks like the experiment is about to begin. What kind of incredible experiment could attract superhumans to participate in this event? Let us wait and see. At this moment, almost the eyes of the whole world are focused here. It is truly the focus of everyone's attention. As the large screens temporarily built around the base of the Statue of Liberty suddenly lit up, a strange, fat figure with 4 metal tentacles flying behind him appeared on the screen. It also appeared in the eyes of everyone in the world. Call. Taking a deep breath, even Dr. Otto couldn't help feeling a little nervous at this moment. He had never expected that the attention Mr. Superman promised him would be so attention-grabbing. Ladies and gentlemen, and friends watching TV, good evening. Today is a very important moment for me. First of all, I want to thank my wife for her support and loyalty over the past decade. As Dr. Otto spoke, he looked lovingly at his wife Rose beside him. Secondly, I would like to thank Wakanda for its strong support and sponsorship for this experiment. And most importantly, I would like to thank Mr. Superman for his great help. It can be said that without Mr. Superman, there would be no important experiment that can change the future of mankind. As he spoke, Dr. Otto waved to Peter, who was lifting the Statue of Liberty easily in the air, to express his gratitude. The camera also cut to Peter's figure at the right time. Peter did not pretend to be cool. He held up the statue of the goddess weighing more than 200 tons in one hand, and faced the camera with the other hand, smiling and greeting. Although, due to the influence of the biological force field, the audience may not be able to see his smile clearly. Superman! Superman! But there is no doubt that at this moment Peter is a true world superstar. No wonder a certain countryman who can destroy the world is afraid of being attacked online. This feeling of one person responding to 100 people is really a bit strange. But I can be Superman or I can be Homelander. But I can never be held back by anything. While enjoying the cheers from the audience, Peter reminded himself in his heart that he was neither Superman nor a Homelander. Or, he could be both, depending on his mood. So, please stay tuned and witness this moment that will surely go down in history. The camera returns to Dr. Otto, who announces with a firm face that the experiment will begin immediately. After putting down all the equipment needed for the experiment, the aircraft took off again and hovered above. On the stage that was the focus of everyone's attention, only Dr. Otto, his wife, and a few necessary operators were left. In an instant, the whole scene fell into silence. Everyone held their breath, waiting for what Dr. Otto said, the moment that would change the future and go down in history. Earth, please fasten your seat belts, we are ready to take off. Standing in front of the new experimental device, which was nearly twice as large as the previous one, Otto showed a smile full of anticipation. The next moment, the metal tentacle behind him took out a pill of the rare element tritium from a sealed box. The pill was several times larger than the one sponsored by Osborne Industries last time and was the size of a pigeon egg. With Wakanda's technology at the time, preparing tritium was not a difficult task. Precisely and steadily, the metal tentacles placed the tritium element in the center of the experimental device. Then, Dr. Otto pressed the laser ignition switch without hesitation. The next moment, the experimental process, which was almost the same as the previous experiment, was repeated. However, this time the audience will not leave midway, and the experiment will not have any unexpected situations like last time. Buzzing! As several powerful laser beams accurately bombarded the tritium element. In an instant, a ray of light like a star burst out from it. The tritium element instantly increased several times in size, almost occupying the entire internal space of the experimental device. Just like a brand new star rising in the distance, its strong light overwhelmed all the lights on the scene, instantly illuminating the night sky of the entire island. At this moment, it was as if day and night were reversed, and the night was as bright as the day. What is that? Is it the sun? It's so bright! Countless people cried out in shock, covering their eyes as they felt uncomfortable from the strong light. Haha, luckily I was prepared. Someone took out the sunglasses that he had prepared long ago and put them on. Could this guy really succeed this time? What materials did he use? Tony put on the sunglasses that Happy had prepared long ago, and looked at the star shining with strong light on the big screen, with a hint of amazement and curiosity in his eyes. Mr. Osborne, I heard that you once funded his experiments. In the military camp, several important military officers, who were carrying the star on their shoulders, were looking intently at the small star that replaced the Statue of Liberty and was emitting strong light. General, this is what happened. A trace of embarrassment flashed across Norman Osborn's face, and at the same time he had a bad feeling in his heart. I'm sorry Mr. Osborne, you should understand why I said that. The general who had signed a cooperation agreement with Osborne Industries said sorry to Norman. But there was no expression of apology on his face. General, please give me another chance. The future weapons we are making for the military will be ready for mass production soon. A trace of anger flashed across Norman's face, but at this moment he could only lower his posture and beg. Sorry, you should have heard the news. Tony Stark is back. Moreover, he is carrying a powerful weapon that no one has ever seen before. After all, it was the military that unilaterally terminated the cooperation agreement, and the general couldn't help but tell Norman the real reason. Tony Stark. A trace of hatred flashed across Norman's face. It was this guy again. Dear audience, we are honored that our experiment was successful. When the shining star blossomed in New York, witnessed by the whole world, Dr. Otto said with great pride. This looks like a small sun? But it doesn't seem very stable. Right. Did this thing actually work? It won't explode like last time, will it? Fuck, is it too late for us to run now? I don't want to be in New York tomorrow, surrounded by all the people I know. However, at this moment, not only the people at the scene, but also the people who looked at the small sun that was constantly emitting flames like a solar storm felt that it seemed not so stable. Even the citizens in New York City couldn't help but want to escape from New York. After all, this small sun seems a little unstable at this moment. It may explode in the next moment, allowing New Yorkers to feel the warmth from the little boy. I know everyone is skeptical about the stability of this small sun, so that's why I asked Superman to come. Next, we will test the stability of this sun in front of everyone in New York, or the whole world. As if he had foreseen this situation, Dr. Otto said with great confidence. Afterwards, he actually took his wife and other experimenters, along with unnecessary experimental equipment, back to the aircraft. As the aircraft took off, a huge shadow suddenly enveloped everyone nearby. It turned out that Superman landed on the stage with the statue in one hand, and with his other hand he lifted up the small sun that was still shining brightly, then slowly raised it to a suitable height and put the Statue of Liberty in his hand back to its original position. Remember to help me fix her. Peter's voice reached everyone's ears. Also, you may suffer from insomnia in the next few nights. As Peter finished speaking these somewhat confusing words, his figure instantly soared into the sky. Everyone looked up at the sky, looking at the shining star that was rising rapidly. In less than a minute, the star had left the atmosphere and was like the brightest star in the night sky. It emits a strong light, making the entire New York City night a little brighter. Chapter 56 Dr. Pym, I need your help. With shining stars hanging over New York. This experiment that changed history has finally come to an end. Under the organization of the army, everyone began to leave the island by boat in an orderly manner. As a billionaire and a popular figure in the military, Tony Stark naturally does not need to take a boat to leave the island like ordinary audiences. An advanced armed helicopter has been waiting for a long time. Supported by several bodyguards, Tony walked through the socialites who kept stuffing notes at him and slowly headed towards the helicopter waiting for him. Da-da-da. As the helicopter propellers spun rapidly, the armed helicopter was about to take off. But the next moment, a thin young man took advantage of the bodyguard's inattention and ran to the helicopter. He shouted to Tony in the helicopter, "Mr. Stark, please wait. It seems to be a male reporter." Happy took a look and turned to report to Tony. "Let's go." If it was a pretty female reporter, Tony might have wasted an entire night with her. "Wait, Mr. Stark." As the helicopter propellers spun faster, the helicopter left the ground. But that guy seemed to be desperate and directly grabbed the horizontal bar under the helicopter, trying to recreate the famous scene of a certain Captain Wavukai. "Shit, do you want to die?" Tony and Happy were helpless and could only let the helicopter land again. Happy even got off the helicopter directly and pushed the guy to the ground. "Forget it. I'm suddenly very interested in what made this guy want to die." Tony walked down from the helicopter at some point and said to Happy. "You're lucky, kid." Happy muttered, letting the young man go. "Hello Mr. Stark, I'm Eddie Bulletin. I don't have the patience to know your name, just tell me what you want." Tony interrupted him impatiently. Okay, Mr. Stark, please take a look. This is what I took in your newly established biological experiment." Eddie didn't hesitate and carefully took out a few photos from his arms and wanted to hand them to Tony. "Sorry, I'm not used to accepting things from strangers." Tony waved his hand and pointed at Happy. "Look, sir." Happy was stunned when he took the photos from Eddie, but then he hurriedly handed them to Tony. "Hey? This is..." Tony's originally nonchalant look instantly became serious when he saw the photo. "Where did you get these?" Tony put the photo away and stared at Eddie seriously. "I took this photo from the biological laboratory you set up. It was taken secretly." Happy revealed it directly. Yeah. I mean, why did you give these to me? Or, what do you want to get? Money? Or other benefits?" No, I just want you to know the truth, or, if possible, I hope you can close that laboratory. Eddie waved his hands hurriedly, indicating that he was not doing it for money or benefits. It seems that you are a trainee reporter. What do you mean? Mr. Stark is saying that professional journalists are not as naive, or stupid, as you are. Happy finished off the opponent without hesitation. Let's go Happy. Tony turned around and got back into the helicopter. Da-da-da. As the helicopter gradually took off, Tony in the cabin took out the photos again. Looking at the man tied to the experimental table in the photo, the light green light emanating from his arm, and the man's extremely painful and beast-like expression, a trace of solemnity appeared in his eyes. Hey, you were very brave just now. Just as Eddie was watching the helicopter gradually disappearing into the sky, a pleasant voice came from behind him. You are. Eddie turned around and looked at the beautiful blonde in front of him, feeling a little overwhelmed. You are very brave, and you are a good reporter. By the way, do you still have photos like that? Hearing the beautiful woman's praise, Eddie couldn't help but blush, and hurriedly took out a few new photos from his bag and said, of course, I have a lot of backups. After all, I'm not a fool. Well, it turned out that they did it. Looking at the somewhat familiar face on the experimental table in the photo, Gwen confirmed her guess. Remember, just pretend that this incident has never happened to you. This is not something you can interfere with. After receiving the news, the smile on Gwen's face slowly disappeared, and then she turned and left. Sure enough, those missing homeless people were captured by Stark Industries, but what kind of horrible things are they researching? Recalling some of the scary scenes in the photos, a solemn look flashed across Gwen's face. No, we need to find a chance to sneak into that laboratory and see what they are researching. Gwen made up her mind silently. General, let's talk about this. Osborn Industries can not only provide future weapons and equipment, but also provide a human body strengthening drug. At the same time, Norman Osborn was still begging the military to retract its decision. But what was left for him was the tail wing of the helicopter that lifted directly into the air. Damn it Tony Stark, why couldn't you come back a few days later? According to the order contract, the military funds would be transferred to their Osborn Industries account in a few days. But now, it's all over. You forced me to do this. I can't lose these orders, and I can't lose Osborn Industries. Clenching his fists, Norman's eyes suddenly became firm, as if he had made a decision. Then he turned around without hesitation, leaving behind a lonely back. Inexhaustible and inexhaustible energy. In a luxurious villa, Obadiah slowly turned off the 120-inch TV screen, sat on the sofa, and sighed while drinking red wine. Humph, as long as the experiment succeeds, both Stark Industries and this endless energy will be mine. Thinking of this, Obadiah couldn't help but smile brightly. Ding! Suddenly, his cell phone on the table rang, as if he had received a text message. Sir, Tony Stark has just received some information that is unfavorable to you. I hope you can prepare early. Looking at this unsigned text message, Obadiah's expression instantly turned ugly. Tony Stark, you come back at a really bad time. I'm about to succeed. So, for my bright future and for my Stark Industries, no, it should be Stan Industries, you have to go downstairs and meet your stupid dad. Obadiah's face was gloomy, and he slowly made his decision. Soon, a few days passed. People in New York City have become accustomed to the fact that every night there is a star hanging in the sky that is brighter than the moon. In the first few days, some people were very curious and watched through telescopes, and even expected the artificial star to explode in space. But after several days, everyone gradually realized that the artificial sun device seemed to be very stable, and no unexpected situations occurred even in the harsh environment of space. Gradually, fewer and fewer people continued to pay attention to that brighter star. Of course, this does not include the government and the military, because at this moment, they are closely monitoring the star floating in space. Endless energy can almost rewrite the current situation of mankind. If this artificial star had not been placed there by that Superman who was as powerful as a god on Earth, they would have probably been unable to resist capturing it and bringing it back for research. That was how it went until a few days later, when there was a knock on the window of the apartment where Dr. Pym lived. Pym, who was studying the new generation of Ant-Man's suit, immediately packed up everything and went to the window to see whose child was so disobedient. But suddenly I saw a familiar figure floating in the sky. Dr. Pym, I need your help. Peter's figure slowly descended from the sky, looked down at Dr. Pym through the window and continued to speak slowly. Help me shrink that star in the sky. Chapter 57, The portal opened successfully, please read. Mr. Superman? Are you sure, you're not kidding? Dr. Pym was already very surprised when Superman appeared in front of him. Hearing these words spoken in a low voice, Dr. Pym's expression became extremely shocked. Of course, I never joke. Peter looked serious, not joking at all. But I don't have any experience using Pym particles to shrink energy devices. Dr. Pym wanted to decline politely, but of course, he didn't lie. Dr. Pym, I believe you can do it successfully. Suddenly, Peter's figure disappeared from Dr. Pym's sight, and the next second, the voice came from behind him. Well, okay, please allow me to clean up first. Turning around and looking at Superman's close and oppressive figure, Dr. Pym knew that he might not be able to refuse. A few minutes later, Pym packed up everything, leaving a message for his daughter, and returned to Peter with the Pym particles he made. He hadn't thought of using the Pym suit to escape. After all, with Superman's strength, he would not be able to escape Superman's pursuit unless he hid directly in the quantum space. Mr. Superman, I'm ready. How are we going to leave next? Dr. Pym looked at Peter, waiting for his action. That's all. Peter curled up a mysterious smile at the corner of his mouth, and then slowly raised his right hand. The next second, a beam of azure energy shot out from the nano battlesuit on his arm, leaving a ball of azure energy in the void. Then the energy ball slowly flowed and spread around like liquid, and soon formed a blue light curtain that was more than 1 person tall. Is this magic? Dr. Pym opened his eyes wide and looked at what was happening in front of him in disbelief. It's just a technology that's still in the experimental stage, but don't worry, at least it's very safe now. Peter smiled, and then, to reassure Dr. Pym, he took the lead in walking into the light curtain. This is truly incredible. Watching Peter's figure disappear in the blue light curtain with his own eyes, Dr. Pym couldn't help but curiously circle around the blue light curtain a few times, but he still couldn't figure out what the principle was. Finally, he simply closed his eyes, like a prisoner going to die, mustered up his courage, and suddenly stepped in. Hello, Dr. Pym. I'm Reed Richards. The Pym particles you created really opened our eyes. We didn't expect there would be such amazing technology. As Dr. Pym walked into the blue light curtain, before he opened his eyes, he suddenly heard a strange voice. You guys, what just happened? He slowly opened his eyes after hearing that, and was immediately shocked to find that the scene before his eyes had changed drastically. It can be said that in the blink of an eye, he went from his home to a laboratory full of technology. And more than a dozen unfamiliar figures appeared in front of him. What you just experienced is a small invention of ours. We will temporarily name it the portal. Reed replied rather proudly. That's right, this portal was created by him. After obtaining a large amount of vibranium and conducting some tests and research, he suddenly came up with the idea of completely perfecting his previous concept of the portal. Then, under Peter's supervision, they opened a portal that could travel across space for the first time. A portal? This is incredible. This is simply God's magic. Dr. Pym walked down a huge arched device and couldn't help but look back at the light blue energy that was gradually dissipating in the device, his eyes full of disbelief. Of course, this technology is still in the experimental stage, and it requires enormous amounts of energy each time it is activated. To be honest, the portal at this time was actually forced open by the huge energy supply. First of all, this device that looks like an arch is almost entirely made of vibranium. Secondly, there are more than a dozen arc reactors on the device for power supply, and it needs to be charged continuously for nearly 10 hours. After sufficient energy is stored in the vibranium, it can be turned on for less than a minute. Moreover, every time it is opened, it means that the palladium elements in more than a dozen reactors need to be replaced. Great energy. Dr. Pym couldn't help but walk around this huge arched device, and sure enough, he saw more than a dozen glowing reactors on its surface. Not only that, this device can only fix the teleportation coordinates on one side. It cannot achieve two-way teleportation, nor can it teleport as desired. Well, just like the scrolls in some games. Reed generously introduced all the shortcomings of this portal, but even so, one could still see a strong sense of pride on his face. City portal scroll? Incredible, incredible. Although he was an outdated old man and didn't know what the scroll of return meant, he successfully understood what Reed said. Oh, by the way, where is Mr. Superman who came early? After exclaiming, Dr. Pym finally remembered Peter. He should be going to retrieve the star that illuminates New York. Look, he's back. As Reed was speaking, he saw a familiar figure appear in the corridor, holding a star shining with bright light in one hand. Late at night, in Tony Stark's villa. Jarvis, is there any news about the biological laboratory that I asked you to investigate? Tony asked Jarvis, leaving the photo he had looked at over and over again on the table. Sir, the company does have records of the establishment of that biological laboratory, and Ms. Potts was forced to take leave at that time. However, all the equipment in that laboratory is not connected to the internet, and the information is stored in an independent server, so unfortunately, I can't. So, that's all you can find out. Tony's face grew darker. When he came back, he found that his exclusive secretary was forced to take leave. He was angry at the time, but he immediately lifted Little Pepper's forced leave and did not pursue the matter further. Unexpectedly, the reason why she was forced to take leave was because of this laboratory. Have any other clues been found on Obadiah's personal computer or phone? At this time, Tony had begun to suspect his father's partner, his uncle. Although he was very resistant to doing so before. I'm sorry. Sir. Mr. Stan's computer has a very strong security system. If you try to crack it by force, he might find out. It seems that he has hidden everything perfectly. Seeing that this method still didn't work, Tony's face finally became completely gloomy. In this case, I have to act personally. The next moment, Tony stood up from the sofa. Pick up the nanoparticle storage on the table, place it in front of your chest, and tap it twice. The next second, the nano battlesuit quickly covered his body completely in less than 3 seconds, and the metal mask fell down with a bang. The eyes emitting white light made people feel inexplicably fearful. Then, dazzling flames suddenly gushed out from under his feet, causing his entire body to break free from gravity and float up. The powerful thrust pushed it directly through the basement door and into the vast sky. Boom! Accompanied by a strong sonic boom, he, wearing armor, instantly broke the speed of sound and flew towards the special biological laboratory. Hey! Did you notice that the bright star in the sky seems to have disappeared today? At the same time, many people were surprised to find that the star in the sky that illuminated the New York night sky suddenly disappeared tonight. Under the dark night, a slender figure in black and white and wearing tights appeared again after several days. Spider silk gushed out, and the figure swayed between the tall buildings, running rapidly towards a laboratory outside New York. Chapter 58, The Brutal Beast. At night, in a tightly sealed biological laboratory in the suburbs of New York City, the lights are still on. Several scientists in white coats are busy in the laboratory, conducting various experiments. A balding researcher slowly walked away from the microscope on the laboratory table. Then he opened the sealed safe behind him, took out a tube of light yellow medicine, and slowly walked into the special room that was strictly isolated. On the metal laboratory table in the middle of the room, there was a homeless man tied up. The skinny homeless man had countless hideous wounds on his body. He seemed to have not eaten for a long time and looked extremely weak. No, don't do this, please, let me go back. As the bald old man slowly approached, the homeless man on the experimental table instantly revealed an extremely strong fear in his eyes. The body, which was already covered with scars and dying, began to struggle violently at this moment, trying to resist the approach of the researchers. However, he still had serious injuries on his body. He had been hungry for several days, and even his hands, feet, torso, and head were completely bound by a hard metal, making him almost unable to move. So no matter how hard he struggled, it was of no avail. Don't be afraid, it will be fine soon. The bald old man showed a crazy smile on his face and slowly injected the medicine in his hand into the blood vessel in the homeless man's arm. As the medicine slowly injected into the homeless man's body, in an instant, the blood vessels under the skin of his arm, which was originally skin and bones, gradually turned light yellow. Then the entire arm turned yellow. Roar! From the homeless man's mouth, there burst out a howl that was not human but like a wild beast, which seemed to contain intense pain. The next moment, his skinny arms began to slowly become thicker. Boom! Finally, with a crisp sound, he even forcibly broke the metal binding on his arms. As the restraints were broken, sharp bone spurs slowly emerged from the outside of his arms. The bone spur penetrated the skin and continued to grow at a speed visible to the naked eye. Soon it was like a sharp blade, flashing a cold light. At this moment, the bald old man had already quickly ran out of the closed laboratory and closed the more than 10 centimeter thick metal door without hesitation. Then he couldn't wait to come to a small window, and through several layers of bulletproof glass, he observed everything in the laboratory with eyes full of madness and desire. I saw that the homeless man's whole body had undergone tremendous changes at this moment. The thin body became extremely strong at this moment, looking like a huge beast that had completely broken free from its restraints. And it is constantly destroying various facilities in the laboratory. Boom! The test bench where he was originally lying was easily picked up by him with one hand and smashed hard against the surrounding metal wall. Then he suddenly jumped up more than 10 meters, and his head hit the metal ceiling above his head hard, making a big hole in it, and then he fell heavily to the ground. Then he quickly got up as if nothing had happened, shook his head, and rushed towards the surrounding metal walls again. The bone spurs standing on his arms were like daggers sharper than metal, scratching deep marks on the metal wall. It's incredible. Every time I see this power that does not belong to humans, I can't help but be fascinated by it. The bald man looked at the beast that was destroying things crazily in the laboratory with intoxicated eyes. How is the experiment going? We don't have much time left. Tony Stark has set his sights on this place. Suddenly, a voice came from behind him, interrupting the desire in his eyes. Mr. Stan, you are here. Although the experiment has made great progress, it is not truly successful. After being injected with the drug, the test subject has a strong tendency to be violent. Even if we use special brain fluid extracted from human brain nerves to fuse with it, and suppress that special violent tendency, we can never completely eliminate it. Turning around and looking at the financial sponsor who supported his crazy scientific research, the bald man said with a tone full of regret. Bang bang bang! As if to confirm what he said, bursts of loud noises of rioting were heard from the sealed laboratory behind him. The bald man pressed a button, and the next moment, a thick poisonous gas gushed out of the closed laboratory. The monster, who was venting wildly, fell to the ground in an instant. The bald man seemed to have done something insignificant, and then, in order to show the results of his research during this period, he opened the sealed safe next to him with his own hands under the gaze of Obadiah. Please take a look at these two medicines. One of them is made directly from the DNA extracted from that arm, and this tube of light yellow is the medicine we improved. He pointed to two colors of potions and introduced them to Obadiah. What's the difference between them? Obadiah looked at the two reagents with burning eyes, a hint of curiosity flashing across his face. Although these initial potions can give humans extremely powerful strength, they also have terrible side effects. After being injected, they will completely turn into a monster full of tyranny and bloodlust, with no rationality at all. After our improvement, the drug will still have strong violent tendencies after use, but it will not completely lose human consciousness, and it does not have unacceptable side effects. Of course, this does not represent my final research results. I am working hard to completely eliminate the side effects. After the bald man introduced himself to Obadiah, he assured him again. No, this place has been targeted. We need to move everything here as soon as possible and go to a safer place for research. Obadiah's eyes flashed with solemnity, and then he slowly made a decision. Give me one tube of each of these two reagents. I'm leaving first. Quickly pack up everything and prepare to move. Then, without hesitation, Obadiah took out one of the two tubes of medicine from the safe, put them away, and prepared to leave. Okay sir, we'll clean up everything right away. Who is it? Just as the bald man closed the safe and prepared to pack up everything and move, a silver-white spider silk suddenly shot out from the sky and instantly stuck to the safe. No. The next moment, amid the bald man's unwilling roar, the safe was pulled out directly. At the same time, everyone was surprised to find that a guy in a spider costume was lying on the ceiling above their heads. Oh no, it's that nasty Spider-Man. At this moment, everyone reacted, and the security guard raised his gun and pulled the trigger at the figure without hesitation. Da-da-da! In an instant, there was a chaos of gunfire, and countless scientific researchers hid under the tables with their heads in their hands. Obadiah also hid under the table, and coincidentally, the bald man was next to him. Oh no, the gunshots are getting quieter. That damn guy is really hard to deal with. After hiding for a while, Obadiah keenly noticed that the gunshots were becoming less and less frequent. And with a burst of bangs and screams, even the last gunshot completely disappeared. Sorry. Obadiah's eyes were fierce as he slowly took out the green tube of potion he had just put away and stabbed it fiercely at the bald man who was hiding with him. Mr. Stan, you! Amidst the incredulous gazes, the bald man gradually lost consciousness. Instead, there was an extremely ferocious beast. Chapter 59 I, Obadiah, am no longer a human being. Hey, everyone, no need to hide, you are surrounded by me. He easily dealt with the armed security guards at the scene by sticking them one by one to the wall or ceiling with spider silk. Gwen walked leisurely towards where several researchers were hiding. Well, this feeling. However, as Gwen slowly approached, her spider sense instantly kicked in. The next moment, the huge metal table that was hiding the scientific researchers in front was suddenly overturned, and with a huge impact, it smashed straight towards Gwen. Wow, are they crazy? They created another monster. Gwen jumped several meters and did a backflip in the air to avoid the metal table that was hitting her. However, the moment she landed, she finally saw clearly that the researcher hiding under the metal table had turned into a very familiar monster. This monster wasn't killed by Superman. Wait, this guy only has 2 arms, and his size is a little smaller than the last one. The moment Gwen saw the monster in front of her, she recalled that not-so-pleasant memory. At that time, she was unilaterally crushed by the 4-handed monster. If Superman hadn't appeared, the consequences would have been. Hey! Suddenly, the monster let out a long roar towards the sky. Its huge body seemed to be filled with power, and its ferocious face was filled with beast-like madness. There was disgusting mucus flowing from the corners of his mouth and his huge eyeballs were covered in bloodshot. Suddenly, the monster's gaze shifted from Gwen in front of him to Obadiah behind him, who was retreating cautiously, trying to find a chance to escape. Fuck! Go find that damn guy! Being stared at by the monster's ferocious and crazy eyes, even Obadiah couldn't help but feel his legs go weak at this moment. Roar! It was as if there was a lingering trace of subconsciousness that still lingered in his heart, a strong hatred for Obadiah. The monster roared, then raised its legs, which were thicker than buckets, and kicked Obadiah hard. No! Seeing that the monster was about to hurt people right under her nose, Gwen instantly shot a spider silk at the monster's raised leg. However, the monster's power was so great that even Gwen staggered and almost fell. Call out! On the other hand, Obadiah was like a kicked football. He flew more than 10 meters away and hit a metal wall with a bang. Ahem, damn guy! I don't know if it was because of his strong vitality or because Gwen's spider silk worked. Obadiah did not faint completely from this heavy blow, but he still coughed up blood. Roar! The monster turned and looked at the nosy Gwen, his eyes filled with endless madness. The next moment, it waved its fist, which was bigger than a sandbag, and rushed towards Gwen without hesitation. Gwen didn't dare to come into direct contact with the monster, and could only rely on flexible movement to dodge in the narrow laboratory filled with many experimental equipment. From time to time, spider silk was shot out and heavy objects were pulled up to smash towards the monster's head. This guy's power seems to be much weaker than the last one. During the confrontation and dodging, Gwen keenly discovered that this monster seemed crazy, but in fact its strength was not much greater than his own. At most, it's just 2 of her. Well, we can find an opportunity to completely subdue it. Gwen's mind raced as she dodged the monster's attacks while looking for a suitable opportunity. Boom! As Gwen's spider sense was activated, she once again nimbly dodged the monster's heavy punch. But the monster's fist, carrying a force of tens of tons, smashed hard into the load-bearing wall of the laboratory. The enormous force caused a spider web-like crack to appear in the load-bearing wall in an instant, and caused the entire laboratory to shake violently. No, we have to lead it away, otherwise this place will probably collapse soon. Feeling the strong vibration, Gwen made a decision. Sizzle, boom! Just as Gwen was about to lead the monster to an uninhabited area, the ceiling of the laboratory was easily cut open by a hot laser. A huge metal plate fell with a loud bang, knocking the monster behind her to the ground. What kind of monster is this? A Tin Man? Under Gwen's shocked gaze, a figure that looked like a robot slowly floated into the laboratory from the air. Hey, Bug, did you see a big bald guy? Like the Lebowski guy if he had long hair. The robot's mask opened directly, revealing a face that surprised Gwen greatly. You are Tony Stark! Gwen yelled in shock. Don't make such a fuss. Answer my question first. Seeing that the little guy in front of him looked like he had never seen the world, Tony asked again helplessly. Do you mean Mr. Obadiah Stane from Stark Industries? Gwen was somewhat speechless at Tony's analogy, but still understood that he was asking about Obadiah. Yes, it's him. Where is he now? Tony's eyes lit up and he continued to ask. He was just kicked by a monster, right at the back of the laboratory. Before Gwen could finish her words, Tony accelerated in the air and rushed into the laboratory. But after a few seconds, it flew back quickly. He's gone. Jarvis, activate the satellite in the air and find him as soon as possible. Tony said gloomily to Jarvis. Sir, we have found Mr. Stan's car, and it is heading towards the city. Page 54. Bye, little bug. The next moment, the mask on Tony's face closed again, and the whole person soared into the sky. Cool. If someone can give me a set of equipment like this, I would like to be your godfather. Gwen's eyes were full of envy as she watched Tony fly away like Superman. Boom. Suddenly, a loud noise brought Gwen back to reality. The monster that was originally smashed to the ground climbed up again, lifted up the huge steel plate, and threw it hard at Gwen. Damn it, why is it always me who gets hurt? Gwen felt helpless after dodging the monster's attack once again. Roar. It seemed that the constant harassment from the lowly reptile, but its inability to catch her, caused the monster to fall into an intense rage. Then, it actually jumped dozens of meters and jumped out from the gap above the laboratory. Oh no, this guy won't run into the city. Seeing the monster running away, Gwen suddenly felt very nervous. The next moment, she hurriedly jumped out of the laboratory, shot out spider silk, and chased after the monster. After they left the laboratory one after another, a figure suddenly appeared in the air. Tony Stark, Spider-Man? He he he. Accompanied by an evil laugh, the figure followed closely behind and chased into the distance. On the road about to enter the city, a luxurious Rolls-Royce car was driving fast. Ahem. Spider-Man? And that guy, they all deserve to die. Obadiah spat out another mouthful of blood, his eyes filled with hatred. But at this moment, in order to survive, he could only rush to the hospital as soon as possible. Wow! Look up in the sky, what is that? Could it be Superman? The pedestrians on the roadside suddenly looked up at the sky, saw a figure flying rapidly, and guessed. Shit, did they attract Superman? At this moment, Obadiah felt as if he had gone to a bath center and was surrounded by special forces. Clang! However, he soon discovered that a metal man wearing red and gold armor came down from the sky and landed directly in front of his car on one knee. No matter who you are, go to hell. The next moment, Obadiah's face was full of madness. He stepped on the accelerator to the bottom and crashed straight forward. Boom! With a loud bang, the entire front of the luxurious Rolls-Royce sank in an instant. Puff! Obadiah's head hit the airbag hard. You forced me! Shaking his dizzy head, the madness in Obadiah's eyes became even more intense. Then, with trembling hands, he took out a tube of light yellow reagent that he carried with him and injected it directly into his body. I, Obadiah, am no longer a human being. The next moment, a terrifying force suddenly filled his body. A primitive madness surged towards his brain. Chapter 60, Sun Suit, Golden Superman. Please read. In Antarctica, in an empty special laboratory. A star emitting dazzling light is placed in the center of the laboratory. A group of scientific researchers are surrounding this star and conducting final checks and preparations before shrinking it. Mr. Superman, everything is ready. We can start the miniaturization experiment. After Dr. Pym gave it a final careful examination, he spoke slowly to Peter who was not far away. Then let's get started. In fact, after several hours of preparation, Peter couldn't wait any longer. Everyone please stay away from the artificial star, we are ready to start the experiment. Dr. Pym shouted to the crowd. At this moment, Dr. Pym was undoubtedly the main person in charge of this experiment. He took out 2 tubes of red Pym particles from the package he brought. Is this Pym particles? Everyone was attracted by the tube of red Pym particles, their eyes filled with curiosity and surprise. Since being kidnapped by Peter, everyone present has witnessed several incredible technologies being realized before his eyes. It can be said that in just over a month, under their witness, the Earth has undergone a huge version update. They have already felt somewhat numb. However, today, facing the black technology that can reduce the distance between molecules of objects, it still makes people feel incredible. Hopefully, My decision is the right one. Looking at the technological achievement for which he had worked all his life, Dr. Pim's eyes gradually became firm. Then, without hesitation, he injected it into the vibranium device outside the artificial star. Now, activate the energy shield. After finishing everything, Dr. Pim quickly moved away from the artificial star in the center of the laboratory and spoke slowly. The next second, Reed pressed the energy shield activation button without hesitation. In an instant, a transparent energy shield visible to the naked eye completely enveloped the artificial star. Although they were fully confident, for safety reasons, they wanted to prevent everyone present, except Peter, from becoming acquaintances in the next second. They also put a lot of effort into safety protection. Everyone, please open your eyes. It is a great honor for Dr. Pim that the technology he has researched is recognized by everyone. The next moment, he pressed the shrinking controller in his hand without hesitation. Buzz, buzz. In an instant, under the gaze of everyone, the artificial star in the center wrapped in the energy shield began to emit strange fluctuations. Just like a human heart, it was injected with life and began to beat slowly, leaving a series of shadows in the air. As the beating feeling gradually accelerated. Sudden. The artificial star suddenly disappeared from everyone's sight. No, it has not completely disappeared, because the dazzling light it emits is still illuminating everyone's eyes. It actually, really shrunk? This is incredible. At this moment, everyone was staring at an artificial star device the size of an egg on the ground in the center of the laboratory, their eyes filled with shock. We seem to have succeeded. Dr. Pim announced slowly with a smile on his face. It's really unbelievable. Everyone stared at the tiny star with burning eyes, fearing that it would disappear in the blink of an eye. Thank you for your hard work, Dr. Pim. Looking at everything in front of him with a calm gaze, Peter slowly expressed his gratitude to Dr. Pim. By the way, if you can shrink an artificial star, then is it possible to shrink a real star? Mr. Superman, please don't make such jokes. Dr. Pim's forehead instantly broke out in a cold sweat. He actually dared to shrink a real star. It's okay, I'm just asking. Peter smiled and didn't ask any further questions. Actually, it's not completely impossible. If we can build a Dyson sphere, maybe. Dr. Pim said hesitantly. Dyson sphere. Peter muttered to himself, slowly committing it to memory. Wait outside for a moment. I'll go in and take a look. Although artificial stars have now been successfully reduced in size, unexpected situations are inevitable. Peter, with his physical body, endured the attack from the protective shield, walked into the shield unscathed, and slowly picked up the egg-sized shining star on the ground. Well, holding the sun and the moon and picking the stars. He lifted up the artificial star that was shining with strong light and observed it carefully. After not finding any problems, Peter placed it on his chest without hesitation and embedded it into the nano battlesuit that had already been prepared for it. The next moment, the nano battlesuit on his body began to surge continuously, and the nanoparticles instantly completely enveloped the small star. The arc reactor, which originally served as an energy source, slowly went out, separated from the nanosuit, and fell to the ground. And the next moment, Peter's figure slowly floated up, and a strong solar energy instantly and continuously flowed into his body. Congratulations host, all your abilities have been awakened. On the black nano battlesuit, the star on the chest is the starting point. A golden energy like sunlight flowed slowly along the lines on the battlesuit like liquid, lingering around his entire body. Even the bright red cloak was now dyed by the golden light that seemed to come from the sun, emitting a bright golden glow. The golden light illuminated Peter's angular face, making it seem as if it was painted with gold, making it even more majestic. At this moment, in the eyes of admiration and respect of everyone, he is like a real god on earth, Golden Superman. At the same time, on a busy street in New York City, Tony looked at the Rolls-Royce that he had forcibly stopped, and slowly walked towards the door, ready to rescue Obadiah from it. Roar! However, the next moment, a roar that was not human-like instantly resounded throughout the street. The roof of the Rolls-Royce seemed to be supported by something huge and broke apart with a loud bang. Jarvis, what's going on? Tony asked, looking at everything in front of him in shock. Sir, it should be the same as the monster you saw before. Mr. Stan also used some special potion. This guy, is he really going to die? Tony never thought that his uncle could be so crazy. Roar! Suddenly, accompanied by a huge roar, the entire vehicle was torn apart by a powerful force, and a monster that frightened everyone appeared in front of everyone. Wow, everyone, run! The monsters are attacking the city again. Why are we so unlucky? I've decided to move away from New York City when I return. It's too dangerous here. Countless pedestrians were already in a state of panic, and while running away, they were making secret decisions in their hearts. The monster's brutal eyes instantly stared at Tony, who was standing there in a daze. The next moment, he roared, clenched his fists as big as saws, and rushed towards him. Uncle Obadiah, it's me. Tony opened his mask and revealed his face in an attempt to wake up his brutal uncle. Tony? Why is it you? Obadiah's fist suddenly stopped, his face full of surprise, and he looked at Tony in armor in disbelief. Hey, if it's you, that would be wonderful. The next moment, he swung his fist rapidly again, hitting Tony's body directly and sending him flying. Boom! The huge impact force directly knocked Tony hundreds of meters away and embedded him into the wall of a building. Ahem, luckily I anticipated this kind of thing, so I developed better shock-absorbing materials. Tony was glad that he was not like that guy who completely ignored the protective capabilities of the armor. Since you started it first, don't blame me for fighting back. The next moment, Tony rushed out of the building and rushed towards the shit yellow monster. However, a figure faster than Tony appeared in front of the monster in an instant. At the same time, dazzling golden beams of light burst out from its eyes, instantly piercing through the monster's body. Instant kill. This guy changed his skin.